Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Life-Changing True Stories today. I bring you a powerful and deeply loving story, asterisk. Julian Ashford adjusted his tie for the third time as he waited in the private dining room of the Meridian, one of Chicago's most prestigious restaurants. At 32, he had built Ashford Technologies from a college dorm room idea into an $80 million empire. He had addressed conferences, negotiated with Fortune 500 companies, and revolutionized cybersecurity protocols used by governments worldwide. But sitting here waiting for a woman he had never met, he felt like a nervous teenager. His business partner, Grant Morrison, had insisted on arranging this date. "Veronica Hayes is perfect for you," Grant had said repeatedly. Harvard Law, partner at her firm by 30. Brilliant mind. She is exactly the kind of woman you need. What Grant meant, Julian knew, was that Veronica was the kind of woman who might overlook the wheelchair. The thought made Julian's jaw tighten. He'd been paralyzed from the waist down for 7 years now, since a diving accident during a vacation in Costa Rica had changed everything. He had learned to navigate his new reality, to build a life that was full and meaningful, despite the limitations. But dating remained complicated in ways that had nothing to do with accessibility. The door opened, and Julian straightened instinctively. Veronica Hayes walked in, and he could see immediately why Grant had been so enthusiastic. She was striking, with sharp features, perfectly styled auburn hair, and a charcoal designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her confidence filled the room as she scanned the space with calculating eyes. Then those eyes landed on his wheelchair, and Julian saw the exact moment everything changed. Her professional smile froze. Her steps faltered. The warmth drained from her expression, replaced by something between shock and poorly concealed disgust. "Julian," she asked, her voice climbing half an octave. "That is me," Julian replied, extending his hand with practiced ease. "Veronica, I presume? It is a pleasure to meet you." She stared at his hand for a long, uncomfortable moment before giving it the briefest possible shake, as if afraid prolonged contact might somehow transfer his condition to her. She sat down across from him, but Julian noticed how she positioned her chair slightly farther from the table than necessary. "Maintaining maximum distance? Grant didn't mention that. You... Veronica began, gesturing vaguely toward his wheelchair. "Use a wheelchair?" Julian finished for her, keeping his tone neutral. No, he probably thought it would not matter. Apparently, he was optimistic. "It is just surprising," Veronica said quickly, too quickly. "That is all." The waiter arrived to take their orders, providing a brief respite from the tension. Julian ordered the restaurant's signature salmon. Veronica requested a salad, her voice clipped and distracted. As soon as the waiter left, the awkward silence returned. Heavier than before, Julian tried to engage her in conversation, asking about her work at the law firm. Her recent cases, her interests outside the office. Veronica answered in monosyllables, checking her phone constantly, her body language screaming her desire to be anywhere else. Every question Julian asked was met with minimal response. Every attempt at humor fell flat. 20 excruciating minutes passed. Then Veronica set down her water glass with more force than necessary and leaned forward. "Look," she said, her voice low, but not quite low enough. "I appreciate that Grant thought this was a good idea, but let us be honest here. I have a certain image to maintain. I attend galas, charity functions, corporate events. I need a partner who can stand beside me at those events. Someone who fits the lifestyle." Julian felt the familiar burn of humiliation in his chest, but he kept his expression carefully neutral. "I see, and someone in a wheelchair does not fit that image." "It is not personal," Veronica continued, as if that made it better. "It is just practical. I mean, think about it. The logistics alone would be complicated, and people would stare. They would ask questions. I did not work this hard to build my reputation just to become known as the woman who dates the guy in the wheelchair. It would be a distraction from my career." Nearby tables had begun to notice the rising tension. Julian could feel eyes turning toward them, curiosity and pity in equal measure. He wanted to disappear, to wheel himself out of this restaurant and never look back. But pride kept him seated, kept his spine straight despite the crushing weight of her words.
Wait, so what you were saying?
Julian said quietly, is that my disability makes me unworthy of being seen with you in public. I am saying I have standards, Veronica replied, standing abruptly and gathering her designer purse, and I am sorry, but you do not meet them. I am sure there is someone out there who would be willing to take on a project like you, but I am not interested in being anyone's nurse or charity case. She said the last words loudly enough that several nearby diners openly turned to stare. Julian felt his face burning, humiliation washing over him in waves. He had experienced discrimination before, had dealt with thoughtless comments and architectural barriers and patronizing attitudes. But this public rejection, this casual cruelty delivered in a room full of witnesses, cut deeper than he wanted to admit. Veronica walked out without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Julian sat frozen at the table, acutely aware of every eye on him, every whispered comment. The waiter approached hesitantly, clearly unsure what to do. Sir, I am so sorry. Would you like me to cancel the orders? No, Julian said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. Just bring me the wine list. The expensive one. The waiter hurried away. Julian closed his eyes and tried to steady his breathing. This was why he avoided dating. This was why he threw himself into work, surrounded himself with the familiar safety of code and algorithms and business, deals that did not care about his physical limitations. Every time he tried to let someone in, every time he hoped things might be different, reality came crashing back with painful clarity. Excuse me, a soft voice said beside him. Julian opened his eyes to find a young woman standing next to his table. She wore the black and white uniform of the Meridian's waitstaff, her dark blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. But what struck him most were her eyes, deep brown and currently blazing with barely contained fury. Yes, Julian managed. I am Alina, she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. And I need you to know that woman who just left is the most horrible person I have ever seen walk through these doors. I have worked here for 3 years. So that is saying something. Julian blinked, surprised out of his misery. Thank you, but you do not have to. ... Yes, I do, Alina interrupted, glancing around quickly before pulling out the chair Veronica had vacated and sitting down. Because what just happened was wrong. Completely, absolutely wrong. And you deserve to know that not everyone in this world is blind, stupid, or soulless. I appreciate the sentiment, Julian said. But your manager is going to notice you sitting with a customer. Let him notice, Alina said with a fierce determination that made Julian's lips twitch despite everything. Some things are more important than following arbitrary rules. And right now, making sure you do not leave here thinking you deserve that treatment is more important than my job. You could really get fired for this, Julian warned. Then I will get fired for doing the right thing, Alina replied. Now, you ordered the salmon, correct? When it arrives, I am going to share this table with you and have a proper conversation, because that woman did not deserve even 1 minute of your time. And you deserve to finish your evening with someone who has the basic decency to see you as a human being. For the first time since Veronica had walked in, Julian felt something other than humiliation. He felt seen. Not pitied, not patronized, but genuinely seen by someone who had just put her livelihood on the line to defend a complete stranger. Why are you doing this? He asked softly. Elena's fierce expression softened into something gentler. Because my little sister Sophie has cerebral palsy. I have spent my entire life watching people treat her like she is less than human because of her physical challenges. And I will never, ever stand by and watch someone be dehumanized like that. Not on my watch. Not ever. Julian felt an unfamiliar tightness in his throat. Your sister is lucky to have you. I am lucky to have her, Alina corrected. She taught me what really matters in this world. And it is not designer clothes or corporate ladders or maintaining some perfect image. It is kindness, empathy, and having the courage to stand up for what is right. The manager of the Meridian approached their table, his expression stern. Miss Carter, what are you doing? Alina looked up at him without flinching. I am finishing a conversation, Mr. Peterson. I will be back to work in a moment. This is highly inappropriate, Mr. Peterson said. So is what happened here tonight, Alina replied firmly. and I chose to address that inappropriateness rather than ignore it. If that costs me my job, then so be it. Mr. Peterson looked between Alina and Julian, clearly torn between enforcing restaurant policy and avoiding a scene. Finally, he sighed. The gentleman has not complained. I will give you 10 minutes, Miss Carter. Then I expect you back at your station. As Mr. Peterson walked away, Alina turned back to Julian with a small smile. So, Julian, tell me about yourself. And I do not want to hear about your company or your business achievements. Tell me about you. What do you do when you are not building empires? What makes you laugh? What is your favorite, completely ridiculous, guilty pleasure? And despite everything, despite the humiliation still burning in his chest and the stares still coming from nearby tables, Julian found himself smiling. Because this strange, fierce young woman had just given him something he had not experienced in a very long time. She had given him hope. The 10 minutes Mr. Peterson had granted turned into 20, then 30. Julian found himself talking to Alina Carter in a way he had not talked to anyone in years. She asked him about his love for vintage jazz music, about the mystery novels he secretly devoured at 2 in the morning, about his failed attempts at learning to play the saxophone. In return, she told him about her dreams of opening her own bistro, about her sister Sophie's infectious laugh, about how she had once accidentally set a kitchen on fire trying to make creme brulee when Alina finally had to return to work. Julian found himself reluctant to let the conversation end. He paid his bill and added a generous tip, but before leaving, he wrote his phone number on the back of his business card. If you would like to continue this conversation sometime, he said, handing it to her, I would really enjoy that. Maybe over coffee? Or dinner at a place where you do not have to work. Alina took the card, her smile genuine and warm. I would love that. How about Sunday? It is my day off. Sunday is perfect, Julian said, feeling lighter than he had in months. Over the following 3 weeks, Julian and Alina saw each other whenever their schedules allowed. Alina worked long hours at the Meridian, often pulling double shifts to help cover her sister's medical expenses and save toward her dream of culinary school. Julian's schedule was equally demanding, with Ashford Technologies in the middle of expanding into the European market. But they made time, stealing hours here and there. Building something neither had expected to find, Julian learned that Alina was 28, that she had been essentially raising Sophie since their mother died 5 years ago from cancer. Their father had left when Alina was 12, unable to handle the demands of caring for a child with cerebral palsy. Alina had worked multiple jobs since she was 16, putting herself through community college while caring for Sophie, who was now 23 and living in a supported living facility that Alina visited every day. She is the strongest person I know, Alina told him during a walk through Millennium Park. Julian navigating the paths easily in his chair while Alina walked beside him. People look at her and see limitations, but Sophie sees possibilities everywhere. She taught me that disabilities do not define people. Lack of compassion does. Julian, in turn, opened up about his own struggles in ways he rarely did with anyone. He told her about the depression that had consumed him after the accident, about the physical therapy that had been agonizing, about the moment he realized he could either let the wheelchair define him or he could define himself despite it. My family struggled with it, he admitted. They loved me, but they started treating me like I was fragile, like I might break. My mother especially. She became overprotective to the point of suffocation. My brother Preston took over parts of the company he thought I could not handle anymore, even though my mind works perfectly fine. It took me years to reclaim my authority, to make them see I was still capable. Are they better now? Alina asked. Julian's expression darkened. They are better at hiding their doubt, but it is still there. They still think I need managing. Still think my personal life requires their intervention. He did not tell her that his family would likely disapprove of their relationship, though he suspected Alina knew. The differences in their backgrounds were obvious, impossible to ignore. Julian lived in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Alina shared a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a working class neighborhood with a rotating cast of roommates to help split the rent. His world was corporate deals and investment portfolios. Hers was double shifts and carefully budgeted groceries. But when they were together, none of that seemed to matter. Their first official date was at Julian's penthouse. He had insisted on cooking for her, wanting to show her that he was capable and independent in his own space. Alina arrived wearing a simple navy dress, her usual ponytail replaced by loose waves, and Julian felt his breath catch. "Welcome to my home," he said, gesturing around the open-plan space. Everything was designed for accessibility, but also for beauty. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered stunning views of the city. Art pieces he had collected over the years adorned the walls. Bookshelves overflowed with volumes on everything from computer science to philosophy. "Julian, this is beautiful," Alina said, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "The kitchen is this way," he said, leading her through. "I hope you are hungry. I am making risotto, and I will be offended if you do not eat at least 2 servings." Alina laughed, the sound filling his home with warmth. "I would never insult a chef's risotto. That is a sacred rule." They cooked together, Julian handling the risotto while Alina prepared a salad and garlic bread. They moved around each other with surprising ease, falling into a natural rhythm. Julian told her about learning to cook after the accident, how it had become a form of therapy, a way to prove to himself that he could still create, still nurture, still provide. "My mother wanted to hire a full-time chef for me," he said, stirring the rice slowly. "She could not understand why I insisted on cooking for myself, but it mattered. It still matters. This is my space, my domain, where I am completely in control." "I understand that," Alina said softly. "Food has always been my way of showing love. When Sophie was having a hard day, I would make her favorite cookies. When my mother was sick, I would cook elaborate meals just to see her smile. Cooking is not just sustenance. It is connection." Dinner was perfect. They ate at Julian's table overlooking the twinkling lights of Chicago, talking about everything and nothing. Julian felt something he had not felt in years. Completely comfortable, completely accepted, completely seen. After dinner, they moved to the couch. Julian poured wine, and they continued talking as the city lights sparkled below them. At some point, Elena's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I need to tell you something," Julian said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I am falling for you, Alina, fast and hard, and in a way that terrifies me, because I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For you to realize this is too complicated, or I am too much work, or that being with me comes with challenges you did not sign up for." Alina shifted closer, her brown eyes intense. "Julian Ashford, listen to me very carefully. You are not too much work. You are not a burden. You are brilliant and kind and funny and talented. Yes, you use a wheelchair. So what? That is just one aspect of who you are. It does not define you, and it certainly does not make me want you any less. And my family is going to be difficult," Julian warned. "They have opinions about everything, including who I should date. And when they find out about us, then we will handle it," Alina said firmly. "Together. I am not afraid of difficult families or complicated situations, Julian. I am only afraid of walking away from something real, because it might be hard. And this feels real to me. Does it feel real to you?" "More real than anything I have ever experienced," Julian admitted. Alina leaned in and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "So we are doing this?" Alina asked. "Officially? We are definitely doing this," Julian confirmed. "You and me against whatever comes next." What came next arrived sooner than either of them expected. 2 days later, Julian received a call from Grant Morrison. "We need to talk," Grant said, his tone serious. "In person? Can you come to the office?" At Ashford Technologies headquarters, Grant was waiting in the conference room with Thomas Brennan, their lead investor and board member. "Julian, sit down," Thomas said, gesturing to a chair. "We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" Julian asked, though dread was already pooling in his stomach. Grant cleared his throat uncomfortably. "There are photos circulating. You and Alina Carter at that restaurant at various places around Chicago, at your penthouse. Someone has been following you." "Following me?" Julian's voice hardened. Why? Because Westbrook International wants to invest $100 million into Ashford Technologies, Thomas explained. They are our ticket to massive expansion. But their CEO, Harold Westbrook, is old-fashioned about certain things. He believes company leaders should present a certain image, and he has expressed concerns about your relationship with a waitress. Julian felt fury building in his chest. My personal life is not his concern. It becomes his concern when it affects his investment, Grant said carefully. Harold Westbrook comes from old money, old values. He is worried about optics, about how it looks for a CEO to be dating someone so far outside his social circle. He thinks it shows poor judgment. Poor judgment, Julian repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Dating a hard-working, compassionate woman who supports her disabled sister shows poor judgment? I am just telling you what he said, Grant replied. He is willing to make the investment if you end the relationship. Otherwise, the deal is off. Thomas leaned forward. Julian, this is $100 million. That is the kind of capital that could transform this company, that could secure everyone's future here. We are talking about hundreds of jobs, expansion into 6 new countries, partnerships that could make Ashford Technologies a global household name. And all I have to do is break up with Elena, Julian said flatly. It is a business decision, Thomas said. Not a personal one. Julian looked between the two men, these people he had worked with for years, and saw the expectation in their eyes. They genuinely believed he would choose the money. They thought this was an easy calculation. No, Julian said simply. Grant blinked. No, Julian repeated, more firmly. I will not end my relationship with Elena for Harold Westbrook or his money or anyone else. If Westbrook cannot see past his outdated prejudices, then he is not someone I want as a partner anyway. Julian, be reasonable, Thomas started. I am being reasonable, Julian interrupted. I am being reasonable about what actually matters in life. Elena showed me kindness when I was at my lowest. She sees me as a complete person, not as a disability or a bank account. She challenges me, inspires me, makes me want to be better. And you are asking me to throw that away for money? No, absolutely not. This is $100 million, Grant said, as if Julian had not understood the amount. I heard you the first time, Julian replied, and my answer is still no. Tell Westbrook his investment is not welcome. I will find other investors, people who care more about innovation than social climbing, people who understand that a CEO's worth is not measured by who he dates. Thomas stood abruptly. You are making a mistake. Then it is my mistake to make, Julian said. This is my company, built on my ideas, my work, my vision. And I am not going to compromise my values or my happiness for anyone's investment. If that costs me business partners, so be it. After they left, Julian sat alone in the conference room, his hands shaking slightly. He had just walked away from a fortune, potentially damaged his company's growth trajectory, all for a relationship that was barely a month old. Some would call that foolish. But as he pulled out his phone and called Elena, hearing her voice wash over him like a bomb, Julian knew he had made the right choice. Because money could be earned and lost and earned again. But finding someone who saw your worth, who valued you for who you truly were, that was priceless. Elena, he said when she answered, are you free tonight? I need to see you. I have something important to tell you. Is everything okay? She asked, concern in her voice. Everything is perfect, Julian said, surprising himself with the truth of it. I just realized what really matters, and I want to share that with you. That evening, Julian told Elena everything. About the investment offer, about Westbrook's conditions, about his decision to walk away. He expected her to be upset, maybe even angry that he had risked so much for their relationship. Instead, Elena burst into tears. You chose me, she whispered, her voice breaking. You chose us over $100 million. I would choose you over any amount of money, Julian said, pulling her close. Because you are worth more than any investment, any business deal, any expansion plan. You are real, Elena. What we have is real. and I am not going to let anyone take that away from us. Alina kissed him then, deep and passionate, pouring everything she felt into that moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. "I love you," Alina said. "I know it is fast. I know it is crazy. But I love you, Julian Ashford." "I love you too," Julian replied, the words coming easily, naturally. More than I thought possible, they held each other as the city lights glowed around them, as people from different worlds who had found something precious together. They both knew challenges lay ahead. Julian's family still did not know about their relationship. Elena's demanding work schedule and family responsibilities would continue to complicate things. The business world would keep judging, keep questioning, keep waiting for them to fail. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They had each other, and they had love. And that was enough to face whatever came next. The fallout from Julian's decision came swiftly. Within days, his mother Catherine requested an urgent family meeting at the Ashford estate. Julian knew what was coming, but he went anyway, with Alina by his side. He had asked her to come, wanting his family to meet the woman he loved, hoping they might see what he saw in her. The Ashford estate was intimidating. A sprawling mansion in the suburbs with manicured gardens and architecture that screamed old money. Elena's hand tightened on Julian's as they approached the front door. "You do not have to do this," Julian murmured. "I can handle them alone." "We are in this together," Elena reminded him. "Remember?" Inside, the entire Ashford family was assembled. Catherine sat in her usual high-back chair like a queen holding court. Julian's father, Richard Ashford, stood by the fireplace, his expression unreadable. His brother Preston lounged on the sofa looking smug. "Julian," Catherine said coldly, her eyes sliding over Alina with barely concealed disdain. "You brought a guest." "This is Elena Carter," Julian said firmly. "The woman I love. Alina, these are my parents, Catherine and Richard, and my brother Preston." "It is nice to meet you," Elena said politely. Though Julian could hear the slight tremor in her voice, Catherine did not offer her hand. "Miss Carter, I understand you work at the Meridian." "I do," Elena confirmed, lifting her chin. "I am a server there while I save money for culinary school." "How industrious," Catherine said, in a tone that suggested the opposite. "Julian, might I speak with you privately?" "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Alina," Julian replied. Catherine's lips pressed into a thin line. "Very well. We heard about the Westbrook deal. You turned down $100 million for this relationship." "I did," Julian confirmed. "Have you lost your mind?" Preston interjected. "Do you know what that investment could have done for the company? For all of us." "I know exactly what it would have done," Julian said calmly. "It would have made us richer. It also would have required me to end my relationship with the woman I love. I was not willing to do that, because she has gotten her hooks into you," Preston sneered. "Come on, Julian. A waitress and a millionaire? It is obvious what she wants." Alina stiffened beside Julian, but before she could respond, Julian's voice cut through the room like ice. "Finish that thought, Preston. And you and I are done. Permanently." The threat in Julian's voice was unmistakable. Preston actually flinched. "We are just concerned," Catherine said, though her tone remained cold. "You have been through so much since the accident. You are vulnerable, Julian. And people take advantage of vulnerable, wealthy men all the time." "I am not vulnerable," Julian said firmly. "I am capable of making my own decisions. And I chose Alina because she is kind, intelligent, hardworking, and treats me like a complete person, not like a disability in a wheelchair." "If she truly cared about you," Catherine said, turning to Alina directly, "she would understand that your future is more important than her feelings. A woman who loved you would want what is best for you, which includes financial security and appropriate social connections." Elena had been silent up to this point, but now she spoke, her voice steady, despite the obvious hostility in the room. "Mrs. Ashford, with all due respect, you do not get to define what love means. I did not ask Julian to turn down that investment. When he told me about it, I told him I would understand if he needed to prioritize his business. He made that choice himself because he believes some things are more important than money. And if you cannot see that, If you truly think your son's worth is measured only by his bank account and social status, then you do not know him at all." The room fell silent. Catherine's face flushed with anger. "How dare you speak to me that way in my own home?" Catherine hissed. "I am speaking the truth," Alina continued, her voice gaining strength. "Your son is brilliant, compassionate, and brave. He has built an incredible company while dealing with challenges most people could not imagine. He deserves to be loved for who he is, not for what he can provide or what image he projects. And if you spent less time trying to control his life and more time actually seeing him, you might realize how extraordinary he truly is." Richard Ashford, who had been silent until now, spoke for the first time. "Julian, is this truly what you want? This relationship, regardless of the consequences?" Julian took Elena's hand and faced his father squarely. "Yes, Alina is what I want. A future with her is what I want. And if that means losing business deals or disappointing this family, then so be it. Because for the first time in 7 years, I feel complete. I feel seen and valued for who I am, not pitied or managed or treated like I am broken. Alina did that. She gave me that gift, and I am not walking away from it for anything." "Then you will marry her," Richard said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Even Catherine looked shocked. "What?" Preston sputtered. "If Julian loves this woman enough to sacrifice business opportunities, enough to defy this family, then he should marry her," Richard continued. "Make it official. Show us all this is real and not just rebellion against our expectations." Julian looked at Elena, whose eyes had gone wide. This was not how he had planned to propose, not even close. But as he looked at her, saw the love and support shining in her eyes, despite the hostility surrounding them. He knew his father was right. He maneuvered his wheelchair to face Elena directly. Taking both her hands in his, "Elena Carter," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "this is not the romantic proposal you deserve. There are no candles or rose petals or carefully planned speeches, but the truth is simple. I love you. I love your strength, your compassion, your fierce loyalty to the people you care about. I love how you see the best in people, how you fight for what is right, how you make me want to be better. You changed my life the moment you sat down at my table and refused to let me believe I deserved that humiliation. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that you made the right choice. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Elena's face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Julian. 1,000 times yes." They kissed. Right there in the Ashford family living room, ignoring the shocked silence around them. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. Catherine stood abruptly and left the room without a word. Preston followed her, shaking his head in disgust. But Richard remained, studying them both with an expression that was difficult to read. "Alina," Richard said finally, "you defended my son with passion and spoke truth that was difficult to hear. I do not approve of how quickly this has happened. I do not understand it. But I can see Julian is happy in a way I have not seen since before the accident. So you have my cautious blessing. Do not make me regret it. I will spend every day proving I am worthy of him," Alina promised. "See that you do," Richard replied. Then, surprisingly, he approached Julian and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are braver than I gave you credit for, son. Your mother will come around eventually. She always does. And if she does not, well, it is your life to live." After Richard left, Julian and Alina sat together in the empty living room, processing what had just happened. Did we really just get engaged in the middle of a family confrontation? Alina asked with a slightly hysterical laugh. "We absolutely did," Julian confirmed. "And I do not regret a single second of it. Though I promise to give you a proper proposal later, with a ring and romance and everything you deserve." "I do not need anything fancy," Alina said, curling against his side. "I just need you." Over the following weeks, their lives transformed. Alina gave notice at the Meridian. And with a proper business loan from Julian's company, with interest rates and a formal contract that she insisted upon, she enrolled in culinary school while beginning plans for her bistro. Julian found new investors who cared more about innovation than social politics. People who appreciated that a CEO with strong personal values was an asset, not a liability. Sophie adored Julian from their first meeting. The young woman with cerebral palsy saw past his wheelchair instantly, engaging him in enthusiastic discussions about her favorite television shows and asking his opinion on everything from music to art. Watching Julian with Sophie, seeing the patience and genuine interest he showed, Alina fell even more deeply in love with him. Julian's relationship with his family improved slowly. Richard began having weekly lunches with Julian and Alina, getting to know her beyond his initial prejudices. He was impressed by her business plan for the bistro, offering advice from his own business experience. Preston remained distant and disapproving, but his opinion mattered less as time went on. Catherine was the holdout. For months, she refused to acknowledge the engagement, would not speak to Alina, and made her disapproval known at every opportunity. But Julian held firm, making it clear that Alina was now a permanent part of his life, and Catherine could either accept it or miss out on his life entirely. 6 months after the proposal, Julian and Alina stood in front of a historic but abandoned building in downtown Chicago. It was 4 stories of beautiful architecture that had been left to decay, with high ceilings, original woodwork, and enormous potential. "What do you think?" Julian asked Alina. "I think it is beautiful and probably way beyond what we can afford," Alina replied practically. "What if I told you I already bought it?" Julian said with a grin. "In both our names, equal ownership." Alina's eyes went wide. "Julian, you did not." "I have a vision. The ground floor becomes Sophie's kitchen, your bistro. But the upper floors become something bigger. A community center focused on helping people with disabilities find employment, develop skills, build careers. We create programs for job training, for advocacy, for connection. We build something that changes lives." Alina stared at the building, then at Julian, tears filling her eyes. "You want to name my bistro after Sophie?" "She is part of why we met," Julian said simply. "She taught you to see people's worth beyond their physical limitations. That lesson brought you into my life. It seems only fitting to honor her." Alina threw her arms around him, overcome with emotion. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Julian murmured against her hair. "Now, there is one more thing." He pulled away from her and, with careful movements, transferred from his wheelchair to kneel on the ground. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. "I promised you a proper proposal," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning but elegant diamond ring. "Alina Carter, you walked into my life on one of my worst days and transformed everything. You saw past my wheelchair to the man underneath. You fought for me when I could not fight for myself. You loved me without conditions or expectations. You made me believe in fairy tales again. Will you marry me? Properly this time, with a ring and romance and all the words I want to say." "Yes," Alina sobbed, laughing through tears. "Yes, of course, yes." Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, and she helped him back into his chair before kissing him deeply. They held each other in front of their building, the place that would become their legacy, their contribution to making the world better. The wedding took place 8 months later in the garden of a small venue overlooking Lake Michigan. It was intimate, only close friends and family. Sophie was Alina's maid of honor, radiant in her joy. Richard walked Alina down the aisle after her own father remained absent. The older man having gradually come to respect and even admire her strength, Catherine attended, sitting stiffly in the front row. But when Julian and Alina exchanged vows, speaking of love, that sees beyond limitations and chooses compassion over judgment, Catherine quietly wiped away tears. After the ceremony, she approached Alina. "You make my son happy," Catherine said simply. "I was wrong to oppose this. I thought I was protecting him, but I was only limiting him. Thank you for seeing what I could not." "Thank you for coming," Alina replied graciously, offering her mother-in-law a olive branch they both knew represented a new beginning. The reception was filled with laughter and dancing. Julian had worked with the venue to ensure everything was accessible, and he danced with Alina, despite his wheelchair. the two of them moving together in perfect harmony, while their loved ones celebrated around them. Sophie gave a toast that left everyone in tears, speaking about how Alina had always been her hero and now Julian was too, because they showed her that love was about seeing people's hearts, not their bodies. 3 years later, Julian and Alina stood in the fully renovated building that had become the heart of their shared mission. The ground floor bistro, Sophie's Kitchen, was thriving. Known throughout Chicago for its innovative menu and warm atmosphere, more importantly, it employed several people with disabilities, offering them fair wages and opportunities they struggled to find. Elsewhere, the upper floors housed the Ashford Carter Foundation, a nonprofit that had helped hundreds of people with disabilities find meaningful employment. They offered job training, resume workshops, interview preparation, and connections with employers who valued ability over appearance. The foundation also ran support groups, advocacy programs, and had become a respected voice in disability rights. Elena's culinary school degree hung on the wall of the bistro. Next to photos of her staff and family, Julian split his time between Ashford Technologies, which had grown successfully without Westbrook's investment, and the foundation work that had become his true passion. Sophie worked part-time at the bistro, greeting customers with her infectious smile. Proving every day that disability did not mean inability, she had become the unofficial mascot of their mission, her joy and determination inspiring everyone who met her. One evening, as they closed the bistro together, Alina found Julian sitting in the empty dining room, looking around with a contented expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sliding into his lap and wrapping her arms around his neck. "I am thinking about that night," Julian said. "When Veronica walked out and I sat there feeling worthless, I am thinking about how you appeared like some avenging angel and refused to let me believe I deserved that treatment. I am thinking about how one moment of courage from you changed absolutely everything. I am thinking about how one moment of seeing someone's true worth changed my life too," Alina replied. "You taught me that love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone perfect for you. Are you happy?" Julian asked, needing to hear the answer. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Alina said honestly. "We built something beautiful, Julian. Not just this place, not just our businesses. We built a life that matters, a life that helps people, a life filled with real love. That is more than most people ever get." Julian kissed her softly. "I love you, Alina Ashford." "I love you too," she whispered back. Outside, the Chicago skyline glittered with possibility. Inside, two people who had found each other against all odds held each other close, grateful for every challenge they had overcome, every barrier they had broken, every person who had doubted them and been proven wrong, because they had learned the most important truth of all, that real love sees beyond appearances, beyond social status, beyond physical limitations. Real love sees the heart, values the soul, and chooses connection over convention every single time. And that kind of love, they had proven, could change everything. Thank you for taking Thed time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories. The Carter estate blazed with lights that Tuesday evening, every window glowing like a beacon of wealth and excess. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting rainbow prisms across the marble floors, where guests in designer gowns and tailored suits mingled with champagne flutes in hand. The air hummed with orchestral music and the buzz of high society conversation. Everyone gathered to celebrate the engagement of Vanessa Carter, 2, Thomas Worthington, 3. Heir to a pharmaceutical empire, Jessica Carter stood near the back terrace, Doors wearing a simple navy dress that her mother had dismissed as dull that morning. She held a glass of sparkling water, not champagne, because even that small indulgence felt like asking for too much. At 26, she had learned to make herself small, to occupy as little space as possible in a family that had never wanted her to take up any room at all. Across the ballroom, Vanessa held court like a queen, her diamond ring catching the light with every gesture. She was everything Jessica was not: confident, polished, beloved. Their mother Eleanor stood beside her, one manicured hand resting possessively on Vanessa's shoulder, beaming with pride. Their father Richard worked the room with his usual commanding presence, shaking hands and accepting congratulations as if he himself were getting married. Jessica took a sip of her water and tried to ignore the familiar ache in her chest. She had long ago accepted her role as the forgotten daughter, the one who hadn't quite measured up. While Vanessa had excelled at everything from academics to social graces, Jessica had simply existed in the background, never quite good enough to earn their parents' approval. A waiter passed by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres, and Jessica reached for one, but her mother's voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Jessica, really, must you hover near the food like that? People will think we don't feed you." Heat flooded Jessica's face as several nearby guests turned to look. She pulled her hand back, the waiter moving awkwardly away. Eleanor glided over, her smile tight and cold. "Why don't you make yourself useful and check on the coat room? I'm sure someone needs to organize something back there." It was a dismissal, pure and simple. Jessica nodded mutely and turned away, but not before catching the pitying glances from some of the guests. Pity was somehow worse than invisibility. She had just reached the hallway when Vanessa's voice rang out, amplified by the microphone someone had handed her. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Your love and support mean everything to Thomas and me." Vanessa paused, her eyes scanning the crowd with practiced charm. "I especially want to thank my incredible parents who taught me what true success looks like, and who never settled for anything less than excellence." The words were like barbs, each one designed to draw blood. Jessica knew because she had heard variations of this speech her entire life. It was the settling, the less than excellent, the disappointment her parents had learned to ignore. But then Vanessa continued, and Jessica froze in the hallway. "You know, growing up I always knew I wanted to be nothing like my sister. Jessica showed me exactly what not to do with your life. While she drifted through community college and dead-end jobs, I was building my future. So in a way I should thank her too. She was the perfect example of wasted potential." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not everyone, but enough. Enough that Jessica felt her lungs constrict, her vision narrowing to a tunnel. She heard her father's booming laugh, saw her mother's approving nod through the doorway. Something inside her shattered. She didn't remember grabbing her coat, didn't remember pushing through the front doors into the cold November night. One moment she was standing in that hallway, the next she was running down the long driveway, her heels clicking against the pavement, rain beginning to fall in cold, stinging drops. The tears came hot and fast, blurring her vision. Years of swallowed hurt poured out in wrenching sobs that tore from her throat. She ran until her legs ached, until the mansion was far behind her, until she found herself on a deserted street corner in an upscale neighborhood she barely recognized. The rain intensified, soaking through her thin coat, plastering her hair to her face. Jessica collapsed onto a bus stop bench, hugging herself as the cold seeped into her bones. She had no phone, she realized, had left it in her purse back at the house. Had left everything. She was utterly, completely alone. Headlights suddenly illuminated the rain, a sleek black car pulling up to the curb. Jessica tensed, instinct telling her to run, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out into the downpour. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive suit that the rain immediately began to ruin, but he didn't seem to care. He had dark hair, strong features, and eyes that fixed on Jessica with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Going to catch pneumonia out here," he said, his voice deep and steady. Jessica tried to speak, but only managed a choked sound. The man stepped closer, and she realized she recognized him. Ryan Blackwood. She had seen his face in business magazines, on billboards advertising his luxury hotel chain. He was one of the wealthiest men in the country, and he was standing in the rain, looking at her like she mattered. "I know who you are," he said quietly, pulling off his jacket and draping it around her shoulders. The warmth was immediate and overwhelming. "Jessica Carter. I've seen you at these society functions, always on the edges, always overlooked." "How do you?" she whispered. "I pay attention." His eyes never left hers. "I've watched your family treat you like you're invisible for 2 years now, and every time I've wanted to tell you, that you're worth 100 of them. Jessica stared at him, unable to process the words. This had to be a dream, some kind of breakdown-induced hallucination. Ryan crouched down so they were eye level, rain streaming down his face. Come with me. Right now. I have a car, a warm apartment, and a life where you'll never be invisible again. I don't understand, Jessica managed. Why would you? Because I see you, he interrupted, his voice fierce. Because you deserve better than what they've given you. Because from this moment on, you're mine to protect, to care for, to show the world how extraordinary you really are. His hand extended toward her, steady and sure. What do you say, Jessica? Will you let me prove to you what I already know? The rain fell harder, washing away the tears, washing away the past. Jessica looked at his hand, then at his face, seeing something in his eyes she had never seen directed at her before. Absolute certainty. She placed her trembling hand in his. Yes, she whispered. Ryan's fingers closed around hers, warm and protective, and he pulled her to her feet. As he guided her toward the waiting car, Jessica felt something shift inside her chest. Terror and hope tangled together. Forming something new and fragile, she didn't look back at the direction of the car. She only looked forward. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing a penthouse that took Jessica's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city skyline, raindrops racing down the glass like diamonds. The interior was modern yet warm, all clean lines and comfortable furnishings in shades of cream and charcoal. It was nothing like the cold, ornate excess of the Carter mansion. This place felt lived in, real. Ryan guided her inside with a gentle hand on her back, and Jessica realized she was still shivering, her clothes dripping onto the hardwood floor. The bathroom is through there, Ryan said, pointing to a hallway. There are towels, robes, everything you need. Take your time. I'll make some tea. Jessica nodded mutely and walked in the direction he indicated, her wet shoes squeaking with each step. The bathroom was spa-like, all marble and soft lighting. She caught sight of herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her makeup had run in dark streaks, her hair hung in wet tangles, and her eyes looked haunted. She stripped off the soaked clothing and stepped into the shower, letting hot water cascade over her until feeling returned to her numb limbs. The tears came again, quieter this time, mixing with the water and disappearing down the drain. She cried for the little girl who had tried so hard to earn love that would never come. She cried for all the years wasted hoping her family would see her. And finally, she cried in relief that maybe, just maybe, those years were over. When she emerged wrapped in a plush robe, her hair turbaned in a towel, Ryan was in the kitchen. He had changed into dark jeans and a fitted sweater, looking more human and somehow more intimidating without the formal suit. He poured steaming liquid into 2 mugs and gestured for her to sit on the oversized couch. Jessica curled into the corner, accepting the mug gratefully. The tea was chamomile with honey, soothing and sweet. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. I still don't understand why you're doing this. Ryan settled into the chair across from her, his gaze steady and unwavering. I told you, I've been watching you. Not in a creepy way, he added with a slight smile. But I attend a lot of the same events as your family. Charity galas, business dinners, society functions, and I've seen how they treat you. Jessica looked down at her tea, shame heating her cheeks. So you pity me? No. His voice was firm enough that her eyes snapped up to meet his. I admire you. Do you have any idea how strong you have to be to endure what you've endured and still show up? Still try? Most people would have broken or become bitter. But you just kept going. I don't feel strong, Jessica whispered. I feel like a coward who should have left years ago. Ryan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Can I tell you something? 6 months ago, I was at the Metropolitan Art Gala. Your mother was holding court, talking about Vanessa's latest achievement. You were standing near a sculpture, completely absorbed in reading the placard. Some man bumped into you hard enough that you dropped your glass. It shattered everywhere. And you know what you did? Jessica shook her head, not remembering the incident at all. You apologized to him? Then you got down on your knees in your evening gown and started picking up the glass pieces yourself so no one else would get hurt. The staff tried to stop you, but you insisted on helping clean up. That's when I knew. Knew what? That you were special. That underneath all that conditioning your family subjected you to, there was someone extraordinary waiting to emerge. Ryan's eyes held hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. I started paying more attention after that. I watched how you lit up when you thought no one was looking. How you were kind to staff members when your family was dismissive. How you had this quiet grace that had nothing to do with breeding or money. Jessica felt something crack open inside her chest. Something that had been sealed shut for so long she had forgotten it existed. Hope. I don't know how to be extraordinary, she admitted. I don't even know who I am outside of being the disappointment. Then let's find out together. Ryan stood and extended his hand again, just as he had in the rain. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest. But I promise you, Jessica, you will never be treated as less than again. Not while I'm around. She took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. They stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Why does this feel like a fairy tale? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because maybe it is, he replied. But the best kind? The kind where the princess saves herself, and the prince just provides the transportation. Despite everything, Jessica laughed. It was a small, broken sound, but it was real. Ryan's answering smile transformed his face from handsome to devastating. There it is, he said softly. I was wondering what your real laugh sounded like. Morning arrived with pale sunlight streaming through the windows. Jessica woke in a guest bedroom so comfortable she had slept dreamlessly for the first time in months. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the previous night came rushing back. She had left. Actually left. And Ryan Blackwood, billionaire hotel magnate, had taken her in like she mattered. Panic seized her chest. What was she doing? She had no phone, no clothes, no plan. The Carter family would be furious. They would come looking for her. Not out of love, but because she had embarrassed them by disappearing. Jessica threw back the covers and padded into the main living area, where she found Ryan on his laptop at the dining table, phone pressed to his ear. He was already dressed in another impeccable suit, clearly ready for a business day, but he smiled when he saw her and held up one finger. I don't care what the board thinks, Mitchell. Make it happen. I'll be in the office by 10. He ended the call and set the phone down. Good morning. How did you sleep? Better than I have in years, Jessica admitted, tightening the robe around herself. But Ryan, I need to think about what happens next. I can't just hide here. You're not hiding. You're regrouping. He stood and moved to the kitchen, pulling out ingredients. And while you regroup, I have a proposition for you. Jessica's stomach dropped. Here it was. The catch. The real reason he had helped her. What kind of proposition? Ryan cracked eggs into a bowl, his movements efficient. I'm opening a new luxury resort in Colorado next month. I need someone to manage the guest experience program. Someone who understands what it's like to be overlooked and can ensure that never happens to our guests. Someone with grace under pressure and genuine empathy. He looked up at her, his expression serious. I think that someone is you. Jessica gaped at him. You want to give me a job? I have a degree in English literature from community college, and I've worked as a bookstore clerk and a museum docent. I have no qualifications for luxury hospitality. You have exactly the qualifications that matter. The rest you can learn. Ryan poured the eggs into a heated pan. I'm not offering this out of charity, Jessica. I'm offering it because I think you'll be brilliant at it. But it's your choice. You can take the job, build something of your own, or you can walk out that door right now. Either way, you're free. Free. The word echoed in her mind like a bell. When was the last time she had been free? And if I fail? She asked quietly. Then you fail, and you try something else. That's how life works when you're not being crushed under impossible expectations. Ryan plated the scrambled eggs along with toast and fresh fruit, setting everything on the table. But I don't think you're going to fail. Jessica sat down slowly, staring at the food. At this man who had appeared in her life like a storm and turned everything upside down. Why do you believe in me when no one else ever has? Ryan sat across from her, his gaze soft but intense. "Because I see you, Jessica. The real you. And she's magnificent." Tears pricked her eyes again, but this time they were different. Not tears of pain, but of possibility. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'll do it." Ryan's smile could have powered the entire city. 3 days later, Jessica stood in Ryan's corporate office, wearing a borrowed outfit from his assistant, facing a laptop screen showing news coverage of the Carter family. Local socialite Jessica Carter has been reported missing following her sister's engagement party. The news anchor announced, "The family is asking anyone with information to come forward." Jessica's phone, which Ryan had retrieved from the Carter mansion through a lawyer, buzzed constantly with messages. From her mother demanding she stop this childish behavior, from her father threatening to cut her off financially, not that she had ever been on, from Vanessa calling her selfish and dramatic, nothing had changed. They still saw her as a problem to manage, not a person to worry about. "You don't have to respond," Ryan said from beside her. "Not until you're ready." Jessica looked at him, this man who had given her shelter, opportunity, and something she had never expected to find: respect. Over the past 3 days, she had seen him in action, running his empire with sharp intelligence and surprising compassion. He was demanding but fair, powerful but kind. And the way he looked at her made her feel like she was the only person in the room. "I'm ready," she said. She opened her laptop and began typing an email to her family. The message was short and clear. She was safe, she was leaving, and she would not be returning. She did not owe them explanations or apologies. She was simply done. When she hit send, the weight that had pressed on her chest for 26 years lifted. Ryan's hand found hers on the desk, his fingers intertwining with hers. "How do you feel?" Jessica turned to look at him, really look at him, and realized that somewhere in the past few days, her feelings had shifted into something deeper, more dangerous, more real. "Terrified," she admitted, "and alive. So incredibly alive." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, sending shivers up her arm. "Good. That's exactly where you should be." Their eyes met and held, the air between them charged with possibility and promise. Jessica felt her breath catch as Ryan leaned closer, his intention clear in his darkening gaze. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, "and I will." But Jessica had spent her entire life stopping herself, holding back, making herself smaller. Not anymore. She closed the distance between them and kissed him. 2. Transformed Jessica Carter's world beyond recognition. The Colorado resort opened to rave reviews, with particular praise for the personalized guest experience program that Jessica had developed. She had thrown herself into the work with a passion she never knew she possessed. Discovering that she had an intuitive understanding of what made people feel valued and seen, Ryan had been right. She was brilliant at it. But more than the professional success, it was the personal transformation that left her breathless. Each morning, she woke up in the small apartment Ryan had helped her lease near the resort. And she chose her own clothes, made her own decisions, lived her own life. No one told her she wasn't good enough. No one compared her to her sister. No one made her feel invisible. And through it all, Ryan was there. Not hovering or controlling, but supporting. He visited the resort twice a week, always making time to have dinner with Jessica, to hear about her challenges and victories, to make her laugh with stories from his own corporate battles. Their relationship had deepened from that first kiss into something neither of them had anticipated. Real, profound love. Jessica was in her office reviewing guest feedback surveys when her assistant knocked tentatively. "Ms. Carter, there are some people here to see you. They say they're your family." Jessica's pen froze mid-notation. She had successfully avoided direct contact with the Carters for 2 months, responding only to legal communications through Ryan's attorney. What were they doing here? "Show them to the conference room," Jessica said, proud that her voice remained steady. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." She took those 5 minutes to breathe, to center herself, to remember that she was not the same woman who had fled into the rain. Then she walked into the conference room with her head high. Eleanor. Richard and Vanessa sat around the polished table, looking out of place in their Manhattan designer clothing against the rustic Colorado luxury. Her mother's face was tight with barely concealed anger, her father's expression calculating. Vanessa looked uncomfortable, which was perhaps the most surprising thing. "Jessica," Eleanor began, her tone falsely warm. "Finally, we've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I received your messages," Jessica replied calmly, remaining standing. I chose not to respond. "What are you doing here?" Richard leaned back in his chair, attempting his usual domineering posture. "We're here because this nonsense has gone on long enough. You've made your point, embarrassed us sufficiently. It's time to come home." "I am home," Jessica said simply. "This is where I live and work now." "Work." Eleanor's laugh was sharp. "Playing hotel manager for your billionaire boyfriend is not a career, Jessica. It's a phase. And frankly, we need you back for the Worthington merger." Jessica felt a cold understanding settle over her. "What does the Worthington merger have to do with me?" Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, looking at her parents, then at Jessica. "Thomas's family is very traditional. They're concerned about family unity. They've made it clear that they expect all family members to be present and supportive for the wedding and subsequent business dealings." "So you need me to play the happy daughter for appearances?" Jessica said flatly. "To pretend we're a loving family, so your merger goes through smoothly?" "It's a family obligation," Richard said firmly. "We've supported you your entire life, and now we're asking for something in return." The audacity of that statement nearly made Jessica laugh. They had never supported her, never valued her, never seen her as anything but a disappointment. And now they wanted her to prop up their business deal? "No," she said. The single word seemed to echo in the silence that followed. "Excuse me?" Eleanor's voice dripped ice. "No," Jessica repeated, stronger this time. "I won't come back. I won't pretend we're something we're not. You humiliated me my entire life, treated me as less than, and the only time I matter to you is when you need something. So my answer is no." Richard stood abruptly, his face reddening. "You ungrateful little, I think you should leave." The new voice came from the doorway. Ryan stood there in a charcoal suit, his presence commanding and protective. He walked into the room and stood beside Jessica, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture of solidarity. "Mr. Blackwood," Richard tried to regain his composure. "This is a family matter." "Jessica is family to me," Ryan said coolly, "and I won't stand here and watch you bully her. She's given you her answer. I suggest you respect it." Eleanor stood as well, her eyes flashing between Jessica and Ryan. "This is about him, isn't it? He's poisoned you against us, filled your head with ideas." "No," Jessica said, her voice ringing clear. "He opened my eyes to what I deserved. He showed me that I was worth more than scraps of attention and conditional love. But I'm the one who chose to leave. I'm the one who built this new life. And I'm the one telling you now that I'm done." She took a deep breath, feeling Ryan's steady presence beside her, and continued, "I don't hate you. I actually feel sorry for you. Because you're so focused on image and status that you never learned how to actually love someone? Vanessa, I hope you find happiness with Thomas, truly. But I won't be at your wedding. Mom, Dad, I wish you well, but I won't be coming back to New York." Vanessa stood slowly, her eyes glistening. "Jess, I'm sorry. For what I said at the party? For all of it. I was terrible to you." Jessica felt her anger soften slightly at the genuine regret in her sister's voice. "I appreciate that, but an apology doesn't undo 26 years. Maybe someday we can rebuild something, but not now. Not like this." Eleanor grabbed her purse with sharp, angry movements. "You're making a huge mistake. When this little romance falls apart and your job disappears, don't come crawling back to us." "I won't," Jessica promised. "Because even if everything fell apart tomorrow, I would still have something you never gave me: belief in myself." Richard moved toward the door, his expression hard. "You're no longer a Carter as far as we're concerned." "Good," Jessica said, and meant it. "I never really was, anyway." The three of them filed out, Eleanor and Richard, radiating fury. Vanessa, pausing at the door to look back once with something like regret before following. When they were gone, Jessica's legs suddenly felt weak. Ryan caught her, guiding her into a chair and kneeling beside her. You were amazing, he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'm shaking, Jessica admitted with a shaky laugh, because you just did something incredibly brave. Ryan took both her hands in his. Jessica, I need to tell you something. I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid of scaring you away. Jessica's heart stuttered. What is it? I'm in love with you. The words were simple, direct, and utterly sincere. I think I started falling for you that night in the rain, watching you be so vulnerable and so strong all at once. And every day since, I've fallen deeper. I love your kindness, your resilience, your brilliant mind. I love the way you notice small details and the way you light up when you talk about guest experiences. I love you, Jessica. All of you. Tears spilled down Jessica's cheeks, but these were tears of joy so pure it almost hurt. I love you too. God, Ryan, I love you so much it terrifies me. He stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. Don't be terrified. Be excited. Because I'm going to spend every day proving to you how extraordinary you are. Jessica looked up at him, this man who had saved her by showing her how to save herself. Promise me something? Anything. Promise me you'll never stop seeing me. The real me. Ryan cupped her face in his hands, his eyes intense and full of promise. Jessica Carter, I will never stop seeing you. You are the most visible, vibrant, incredible woman I have ever known. And if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget that. He kissed her then, deep and passionate and full of promise. Jessica melted into him, letting herself feel everything she had suppressed for so long: desire, hope, love, joy. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she was smiling wider than she ever had before. So what happens now? She asked. Ryan grinned, that devastating smile that made her heart race. Now we live. We build. We love. We create something beautiful together. Your family tried to make you small, but Jessica, you were always meant to shine. Jessica looked out the conference room window at the snow-capped mountains beyond. At the resort she had helped bring to life, at the world of possibility stretching before her. She thought about the girl who had fled into the rain, broken and defeated, and the woman standing here now, whole and fierce and free. I'm ready, she said. Turning back to Ryan, I'm ready to shine. He took her hand, interlacing their fingers. Then let's light up the whole damn sky. 6 months later, Jessica stood in a different conference room in the same resort, presenting her guest experience program expansion to a room full of hospitality executives. Her own company, not Ryan's, though he sat in the back row watching with obvious pride. She had taken the skills she developed and launched her own consulting firm, helping luxury properties worldwide create more personalized, empathetic guest experiences. The presentation ended to enthusiastic applause. As the executives filed out, already talking about contracts and partnerships, Ryan made his way to the front. You were magnificent, he said, pulling her into his arms. I had a good teacher, Jessica replied, kissing him softly. You had natural talent. I just gave you the space to discover it. Ryan pulled back slightly, his expression suddenly nervous in a way she had never seen before. Actually, speaking of space, I was hoping you might be willing to share some of yours. Jessica tilted her head, confused. What do you mean? Ryan took a deep breath and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, dropping to one knee right there in the empty conference room. Jessica's hands flew to her mouth, her heart threatening to beat right out of her chest. Jessica Carter, you transformed my life the moment you took my hand in the rain. You showed me what real strength looks like, what true grace means. I don't just love you, I admire you. I respect you. I am in awe of you every single day. Will you marry me? Will you let me be your partner in this extraordinary life you're building? Through tears of absolute joy, Jessica pulled him to his feet. Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect sapphire surrounded by diamonds, unique and stunning, just like everything else he had given her. They kissed as the Colorado sun set outside, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Jessica had been humiliated by her family, had run into the rain in tears. But that night had not been an ending. It had been a beginning. The beginning of discovering who she really was. The beginning of understanding her own worth. The beginning of a love that saw her, truly saw her. For the first time in her life, she had been told she would never shine, that she would always be a shadow. They had been wrong. Jessica Carter blazed like the sun, and nothing would ever dim her light again. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories. Olivia Carter stared at the rejection email on her laptop screen, the 20th one this month. At 24 years old with a marketing degree from a decent university, she thought finding a job would be easier. But the reality of post-graduation life had hit her like a freight train. Her savings account was nearly empty, rent was due in a week, her mother's concerned phone calls were becoming daily occurrences. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca, her college roommate and closest friend. "Stop moping. We're going out tonight." "No excuses," Olivia groaned and typed back. "Not in the mood, Becca." Within seconds, her phone rang. "Listen here, Carter." Rebecca's voice was firm but loving. "You've been sending out resumes and crying into ice cream for 3 months. You need a break. There's a networking mixer tonight at the Apex Lounge. Rich people, potential connections, free drinks. You're coming." "I can't afford to go to places like the Apex," Olivia protested. "It's a professional event. Free entry. Just wear that black dress I know you still have and meet me there at 8. And Liv, wash your hair, please." Olivia looked at her reflection in the dark laptop screen. Rebecca had a point. She looked terrible. 3 hours later, Olivia stood in front of the Apex Lounge, feeling completely out of place. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of establishment where she imagined people discussed million-dollar deals over cocktails she couldn't pronounce. Her black dress suddenly felt cheap and worn. "You look amazing." Rebecca appeared beside her, linking their arms together. "Now, stop looking like you're about to face a firing squad and come inside." The lounge was sophisticated and dimly lit with soft jazz playing in the background. Beautiful people in expensive clothes, mingled with champagne flutes, their laughter floating through the air like music. Olivia felt her anxiety spike. "I'll get us drinks," Rebecca announced and disappeared into the crowd before Olivia could object. Left alone, Olivia made her way to a quiet corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, thousands of lights twinkling against the dark sky. "You're beautiful, isn't it?" The voice came from beside her, deep and smooth like aged whiskey. Olivia turned and her breath caught in her throat. The man standing there was possibly the most attractive person she had ever seen in real life. He was tall, with dark hair that looked artfully messy, strong jawline, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow in the dim lighting. His suit probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. "It is," she managed to say, grateful her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "Julian," he extended his hand with a smile that made her knees weak. "Olivia," she shook his hand, electricity shooting up her arm at the contact. "So, Olivia, what brings you here tonight, besides the view?" Something about the way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the room, made her honest. "My friend dragged me here, said I needed to stop wallowing in unemployment and start networking." "Unemployed?" He seemed surprised. "What field?" "Marketing. Recent graduate. Apparently having a degree in enthusiasm isn't enough anymore." She laughed bitterly. "Sorry, that was probably too much information for a stranger." "I like honesty," Julian said, his eyes never leaving hers. "And for what it's worth, any company would be lucky to have someone with your credentials." "You don't know my credentials," Olivia pointed out. "I know you're intelligent. Can tell by the way you speak. You're well educated based on your vocabulary. And you have integrity because you could have lied and said you were here for business, but you told the truth instead." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That's very observant. I'm good at reading people." They talked for hours. Julian was funny and charming without being arrogant. He asked about her dreams and goals, listened intently when she spoke, and shared stories that made her laugh until her sides hurt. He never mentioned what he did for work, and she never asked, content to just enjoy the conversation. Rebecca appeared. Briefly saw Olivia engaged with Julian, gave an obvious thumbs up, and vanished again. Your friend approves, Julian noted with amusement. She's very invested in my social life, Olivia admitted, or lack thereof. Well, I for one am grateful she dragged you here tonight. The way he looked at her when he said that made Olivia's heart race. There was intention behind those blue eyes, desire barely contained beneath the surface of polite conversation. Dance with me, he said suddenly, extending his hand. There's no dance floor, she pointed out. There is now. He led her to an empty space near the windows and pulled her close. They swayed to the jazz music, bodies pressed together, the rest of the world fading away. Olivia's hands were on his shoulders, his hands on her waist, and the air between them crackled with tension. I want to kiss you, Julian murmured, his lips close to her ear. Then kiss me, she whispered back, surprised by her own boldness. The kiss was everything. Soft at first, then deeper, more urgent. His hands moved to her face, holding her like she was precious, like she might disappear. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Olivia knew she was in trouble. Come with me, Julian said. Not a question, but an invitation. She should have said no, should have been practical and cautious like always. But looking into his eyes, feeling the pull between them, she heard herself say yes. The taxi ride to his place was torture in the best way. Stolen kisses at red lights, his hand on her thigh, her fingers in his hair. By the time they reached his building, a stunning high-rise in the most expensive part of the city, Olivia was dizzy with want. His penthouse was enormous and elegantly furnished, but she barely noticed. The moment the door closed, they were on each other. Clothes scattered across the marble floor, hands exploring, lips tasting.
Are you sure?
Julian asked when they reached his bedroom, his forehead pressed against hers. Olivia had never been more sure of anything. Yes, that night was a revelation. Julian was attentive and passionate, gentle when she needed him to be, and commanding when she wanted him to be. He learned her body like he was studying for the most important test of his life, and when she cried out his name, he looked at her like she had given him the greatest gift. Afterward, wrapped in his arms in the massive bed, Olivia felt something she hadn't felt in months. Happy, content, like maybe everything was going to be okay. Stay, Julian whispered against her hair as her eyes grew heavy. Okay, she murmured, already half asleep. But when Olivia woke as dawn light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, panic set in. What had she done? She didn't even know this man's last name. This wasn't her. She didn't have one-night stands with strangers in penthouses. Moving. Carefully so as not to wake Julian, she gathered her clothes and dressed quickly. On the nightstand, she saw a notepad from some hotel. With trembling hands, she wrote a quick note. Thank you for an unforgettable night. Please don't look for me. She left it on the pillow beside him and slipped out of the penthouse, her heart breaking with every step. In the elevator, tears finally came. She had just experienced something magical and was walking away from it. Because girls like her didn't end up with men like him. That was just reality. The next 2 weeks were misery. Olivia tried to forget. Julian tried to focus on job hunting, tried to convince herself it was just one night, it meant nothing. But her body remembered his touch. Her mind replayed his laugh, and her heart ached in a way she didn't understand. Then the email came. Dear Ms. Carter, we are pleased to invite you to interview for the executive assistant position at Sterling Media Group. Your qualifications have impressed our hiring team. Please confirm your availability for an interview this Friday at 2 p.m. Regards Human Resources, Sterling Media Group. Olivia stared at the email in shock. Sterling Media Group was one of the biggest media conglomerates in the country. She didn't even remember applying there, but she must have in her desperate job-hunting frenzy. This was it. This was her chance. Friday arrived too quickly. Olivia dressed in her best interview outfit, a navy blue skirt suit that was professional but flattering. She practiced her answers on the subway ride downtown, trying to calm her nerves. The Sterling Media Group building was impressive, all gleaming glass and modern architecture. The lobby alone was bigger than her entire apartment. At the reception desk, a polished woman directed her to the executive floor. "The CEO himself will be conducting your interview," the receptionist said, with what seemed like sympathy. "Mr. Sterling doesn't usually do first interviews, but he personally requested to meet you, Mr. Sterling." The name tickled something in Olivia's memory, but she was too nervous to place it. An assistant named Patricia met her at the elevator and led her down a hallway lined with photos of the company's achievements. At the end of the hall were large double doors made of dark wood. Patricia knocked twice. "Mr. Sterling, Miss Carter is here for her interview." "Send her in," came the reply from inside. That voice, Olivia's blood turned to ice. No, it couldn't be. Patricia opened the door and gestured for her to enter. On autopilot, Olivia walked into the office, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might explode. The office was massive with modern furniture and one entire wall of windows overlooking the city. Behind a large mahogany desk sat a man in an expensive suit, his attention on some papers in front of him. Then he looked up. Julian. Their eyes met and time stopped. Recognition flashed across his face, quickly followed by something else. Surprise, satisfaction, and underneath it all, heat. "Miss Carter?" he said slowly, a smile playing at his lips. What a pleasant surprise. Olivia couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The man she had spent one passionate night with, the man she had run away from, was Julian Sterling, billionaire, CEO, her potential boss. "I can explain," she started, her voice shaking. "Can you?" He stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against it casually. "Because I'm very curious to hear why you disappeared without a trace. I didn't know who you were. Would it have mattered?" "Yes, no, I don't know." She was rambling. "This is inappropriate. I should go. Sit down." "Miss Carter," his voice was commanding now, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. "We have an interview to conduct. You can't be serious." "I'm always serious about business." "Sit." With trembling legs, Olivia sat in the chair across from his desk. This was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. Julian returned to his seat, his expression unreadable. "Your resume is impressive. Top of your class, relevant internship experience, strong references. Tell me, why do you want to work at Sterling Media Group?" Was he really going to pretend nothing happened? Olivia took a shaky breath and tried to focus. "Your company is an industry leader with a reputation for innovation. I believe my skills would be valuable to your team, and the growth opportunities here are unmatched. Now tell me the real reason. That is the real reason." Olivia. The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. "We're past pretending, don't you think?" Olivia's hands gripped the armrests of her chair as Julian watched her with those impossibly blue eyes. The same eyes that had looked at her with such tenderness 2 weeks ago now held a challenge. "The real reason," she said carefully, "is that I need a job. My rent is overdue, my savings are gone, and this opportunity could change my life. What happened between us was a mistake, Mr. Sterling, one I'd like to forget." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. But it was gone in an instant. "A mistake," he repeated. "Interesting. It didn't feel like a mistake when you were in my arms." "Mr. Sterling, please." "It's Julian. I think we're past formalities." Olivia stood up. "We're not. If you're going to hold that night over my head, then I don't want this job. I may be desperate, but I have my dignity." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Julian's expression softened. "You're right. I apologize. That was unprofessional." He gestured to the chair. "Please, sit. Let me start over." Cautiously, Olivia sat back down. "Your qualifications are excellent, Olivia, truly. I need an executive assistant who is intelligent, organized, and can handle high-pressure situations. Someone who isn't intimidated easily and speaks their mind. From what I've seen, you're all of those things. You barely know me. I know enough. The job is yours if you want it. The salary is competitive. Benefits are comprehensive. And you'll gain experience that will open doors anywhere in the industry." It was everything she needed. Everything she had been praying for. But working for Julian every day, seeing him, remembering that night. Could she do that? What about what happened between us? She asked quietly. What about it? We're both adults. We shared one night before we knew we'd be working together. It doesn't have to define our professional relationship unless we let it. He made it sound so simple, so rational. And if I accept, then you start Monday. Patricia will handle all the paperwork and orientation. He stood and extended his hand across the desk. Do we have an agreement, Miss Carter? Olivia looked at his outstretched hand. This was insane, but she needed this job. She could be professional. She could keep her distance. She shook his hand, ignoring the spark that shot through her. We have an agreement, Mr. Sterling. His smile was slow and devastating. Excellent. I look forward to working with you. Monday morning arrived too soon. Olivia dressed conservatively in a gray pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, minimal makeup. She wanted to look competent and unapproachable. Patricia showed her to her desk, positioned directly outside Julian's office. Of course, she would see him every time he entered or left. There was no way that was a coincidence. Mr. Sterling likes his coffee black at 9 and 3, Patricia explained. He has a morning meeting with the marketing team at 10, lunch with investors at noon, and conference calls all afternoon. His calendar is on the shared system. He expects you to stay on top of schedule changes and handle any conflicts. Understood, Olivia said, taking notes. One more thing, Patricia lowered her voice. Be careful around Vanessa Monroe, the director of business development. She and Mr. Sterling used to date, and she doesn't like attractive women around him. Olivia's stomach tightened. They dated. For about 6 months last year. She thought it was serious, but he ended things. She still acts like she has claim to him. Before Olivia could respond, Julian's office door opened. He looked impossibly handsome in a charcoal suit, his hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. When he saw Olivia, something flashed in his eyes. Miss Carter, good morning. I need the Henderson files for the 10 o'clock meeting. Of course, Mr. Sterling. Olivia's voice was steady, professional. And Olivia? He paused at her desk. Welcome to Sterling Media Group. The first week was a test of endurance. Julian was demanding but fair, expecting excellence, but acknowledging good work. They maintained careful professionalism.
No.
Though Olivia caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. Vanessa Monroe appeared on Wednesday. She was stunning with platinum blonde hair, designer clothes, and the confidence of someone who knew her worth. She swept past Olivia's desk without acknowledgement and entered Julian's office without knocking. Julian, darling, her voice carried through the partially open door. I heard you hired a new assistant. She looks very young. Olivia's qualified and capable, Julian replied coolly. I'm sure she is. Vanessa's tone dripped with condescension. Just be careful. Young, pretty assistants can be trouble. Remember what happened at Davidson Corp? Vanessa, was there something work-related you needed? There was a pause. We should have dinner. Catch up properly. I'm too busy right now. You're always too busy. But you have to eat, Julian. How about Friday? Olivia tried not to listen, but jealousy burned in her chest. She had no right to feel that way. Julian wasn't hers. I'll check my schedule, Julian said in a tone that clearly meant no. When Vanessa emerged, she stopped at Olivia's desk. So you're the new girl. How sweet. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Word of advice, honey? Don't get any ideas about Julian. He goes through assistants quickly, and office romances never end well. Especially for the assistant. I'm here to work, Ms. Monroe. Nothing more? Of course you are. Vanessa's laugh was cold. They all say that. The days blended together. Olivia proved herself capable, handling crises with calm efficiency, anticipating Julian's needs before he voiced them. He praised her work, always professionally. But there was tension simmering beneath every interaction. Late nights became common. The company was launching a major new platform, and everyone was working overtime. One Thursday evening, Olivia found herself alone in the office with Julian at 9 p.m., reviewing presentation slides. This section needs work, he said, leaning over her shoulder to point at the screen. His proximity made her pulse race. The data is solid, but the visual presentation is cluttered. I can simplify it, she said, too aware of his cologne, the heat of his body. Good. But he didn't move away. For a moment, they both froze, his face inches from hers. Julian, she whispered. I know. His voice was rough. I'm sorry. I just need a minute. He straightened and walked to the window, putting distance between them. This is harder than I thought it would be. What is? Being around you every day. Pretending that night didn't happen? Pretending I don't want to kiss you every time you walk into my office. Olivia's breath caught. We agreed to keep things professional. I know what we agreed. He turned to face her. But knowing what I should do and actually doing it are two different things. You haunt me, Olivia. Every night since you left, I've thought about you. Don't say that. Why not? It's the truth, because it makes this impossible. She stood up. Because I can't afford to lose this job. Because everyone already assumes the worst about me being young and female and working for you. If anything actually happened, it would destroy my credibility. You're right, he said after a moment. I apologize. It won't happen again. But the words hung in the air between them, changing everything. The following week, the company announced a business trip to San Francisco for the platform launch. Julian would attend, along with key staff members. As his assistant, Olivia had to go too. Separate hotel rooms, Julian said when discussing arrangements. Separate flights if you prefer. Same flight is fine, Olivia replied. We're professionals. Vanessa also attended the trip, making her displeasure known. How convenient that Julian's new assistant gets to go to San Francisco, she commented loudly in the office. Must be nice to have special privileges. Olivia ignored her, but the whispers were starting. Colleagues gave her looks. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. The rumor mill was churning, and Vanessa was feeding it. San Francisco was beautiful. The launch event was a success, and Julian's presentation was brilliant. At the celebration dinner, Olivia sat with the marketing team while Julian entertained investors. She watched him work the room, charming and confident, and felt a pang of longing. He's something, isn't he? One of the marketing managers, Christine, said, I've worked here 5 years and still get impressed by him. He's very good at what he does, Olivia agreed carefully. Vanessa thinks she'll get him back eventually. She's been telling everyone they're rekindling things. Olivia's heart sank. Are they? Who knows? Julian keeps his personal life private, but Vanessa is determined. Back at the hotel, Olivia couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Julian and Vanessa, about the impossibility of her situation. Around midnight, there was a knock on her door. Through the peephole, she saw Julian. She shouldn't open it. Should pretend she was asleep. But her hand moved to the lock of its own accord. What are you doing here? She whispered. I can't stop thinking about you, he said simply. I tried. God knows I tried. But seeing you tonight, watching you smile at other people, knowing you're so close but untouchable, it's driving me insane. Julian, we can't. I know all the reasons why we can't. But I need to know something. Do you feel it too? This pull between us? Olivia wanted to lie. Should lie. But looking into his eyes, she couldn't. Yes, I feel it. Yeah, let me in, please. Just for tonight, let's stop fighting this. It was a terrible idea. Career suicide. Everything she feared. But when he looked at her like that, none of it mattered. She stepped aside. He entered her room. This time was different from their first night. Slower, more intense. They took their time exploring each other, memorizing every touch, every sound. When they finally came together, it felt like coming home. Afterward, lying in the tangled sheets, Julian held her close. I don't want to hide this anymore. We have to, Olivia said against his chest. You know we do. Why? Because people will talk? Let them talk. It's easy for you to say. You're the CEO. Your reputation is secure. But me. I'll be the assistant who slept her way to the top. Everything I've worked for will be dismissed. I won't let that happen. You can't control what people think. He was quiet for a long moment. So what do? We go back to New York and pretend this didn't happen. Again. I don't think I can do that. You have to, she said, though her heart was breaking. We both do. But as the night wore on, and they met, the return to New York was awkward. On the flight, they sat in different rows, maintaining professional distance. But the air between them was charged with everything left unsaid. Back at the office, they tried to resume their careful dance. But something had shifted. The looks lasted longer. The accidental touches felt deliberate. And everyone noticed. Vanessa especially noticed. She started watching Olivia like a hawk, looking for any sign of impropriety. She questioned every decision Julian made regarding Olivia's responsibilities, every project she was assigned. "Why is your assistant handling the Morrison account?" Vanessa demanded in a meeting. "That's usually reserved for senior staff, 'cause she's capable," Julian replied tersely. "And she has fresh ideas. Any other questions?" The tension in the room was palpable. After the meeting, Christine pulled Olivia aside. "Be careful. Vanessa's out for blood. I haven't done anything wrong. Doesn't matter. She's convinced something's going on between you and Julian. And honestly, Liv, the way he looks at you, she might not be wrong." Olivia's stomach churned. "There's nothing going on. Maybe not. But the chemistry is obvious to everyone." That night, working late again, Julian called Olivia into his office. The moment she closed the door, he pulled her into his arms. "We need to talk about this," he said. "There's nothing to talk about, Olivia. I'm falling in love with you." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Don't. Too late. I've been falling since that first night. Maybe before that, from the moment you told the truth about why you were at that lounge." Tears filled her eyes. "This can't work, Julian." "You know it can't? Why not? Because of what people will say? Because of Vanessa's jealousy? Those aren't good enough reasons. They're the only reasons that matter. I worked too hard to get here. I won't have my accomplishments diminished because people think I slept my way to success. Then I'll make you a senior executive. Give you real responsibilities that no one can question. That would only make it worse. Can't you see that? Any promotion, any recognition will be attributed to our relationship. I'll never be taken seriously." Julian's jaw clenched. "So what? We just ignore this? Pretend we don't care about each other?" "Yes," she said, though the word tasted like ash. "That's exactly what we do." But ignoring it became impossible. Stolen moments in empty conference rooms, kisses in the parking garage, text messages that were far from professional. They were playing with fire, and Vanessa was watching. 2 weeks before the annual company gala, Vanessa made her move. She cornered Olivia in the ladies' room, her expression triumphant. "I know about you and Julian," she said. Olivia's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about, please." "I followed you to the parking garage last week. I have photos." She pulled out her phone, showing images of Julian kissing Olivia by his car. "Quality could be better, but they're clear enough." "What do you want?" "I want you gone. Quit, and I'll delete these. Stay, and I'll make sure everyone sees them at the gala. Your choice." Olivia felt sick. "You're blackmailing me? I'm protecting Julian from a gold digger. He doesn't see what you really are, but I do. You're using him for his money and connections." "That's not true. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what people believe. And when they see these photos, when I tell them how you seduced the boss, how you manipulated your way into this job, they'll believe me. Because that's what people expect from girls like you." "Girls like me? Young, pretty, ambitious? You're a cliché, honey. And clichés are easy to destroy." Vanessa left, and Olivia collapsed against the sink, shaking. She had to tell Julian. But what could he do? Fire Vanessa? That would only confirm the rumors. Take out a public statement? That would make things worse. For the next 2 weeks, Olivia lived in dread. She considered quitting, but couldn't bring herself to do it. She had done nothing wrong. Why should she run? The night of the gala arrived. Olivia wore a midnight blue gown that made her feel beautiful and terrified all at once. She arrived early to help with last-minute arrangements, avoiding Julian as much as possible. The ballroom was elegant, with crystal chandeliers and hundreds of guests in formal attire. Julian gave his annual speech, commanding and charismatic. Olivia watched from the back, her heart aching. At 10 p.m., Vanessa made her move. She clinked her glass for attention, the sound cutting through conversations. "Excuse me, everyone." Her voice rang out. "I have an announcement." Julian's eyes found Olivia's across the room. He looked confused. "I think you all deserve to know the truth about our esteemed CEO and his new assistant." Vanessa's smile was vicious. "You see, Ms. Carter here didn't get her job through traditional means. She seduced Julian Sterling before she ever applied, and he rewarded her with a position she isn't qualified for." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Olivia felt hundreds of eyes turn to her. "That's not true," she said, but her voice was too quiet, "isn't it?" "Then explain these." Vanessa projected the parking garage photos on the large screens around the room. Julian and Olivia, clearly kissing. The room erupted in whispers. Olivia's vision blurred with tears. "Vanessa, that's enough." Julian's voice cut through the chaos, cold and furious. "The truth hurts, doesn't it, Julian? She played you, got you into bed, then conveniently showed up for an interview. How calculated. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I? Everyone here is thinking the same thing. She's a gold digger who used her body to get ahead. It's pathetic, really." Olivia couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This was her worst nightmare playing out in front of everyone. Without another word, she pushed through the crowd and ran. She heard Julian calling her name, but didn't stop. In the lobby, she kicked off her heels and kept running, tears streaming down her face. At home, she locked herself in her apartment and sobbed. Her phone exploded with messages from Julian, from Christine, from Rebecca, who had heard about the disaster through social media. Through her tears, she typed out an email. "Dear Mr. Sterling, I resign effective immediately. I'm sorry for any embarrassment I've caused you and the company. Sincerely, Olivia Carter." She hit send and turned off her phone. The next few days were a blur. Olivia ignored all calls and messages. She ate nothing, slept fitfully, and tried to figure out how to rebuild a life that felt shattered. Rebecca finally showed up with a key. Olivia had given her years ago. "All right, that's enough wallowing. Get in the shower, Rebecca." "I can't." "Can't. You can and you will. That viper Vanessa doesn't get to win. You did nothing wrong. Liv, you fell for a guy. That's not a crime. I slept with my boss. You slept with a man before he was your boss. Big difference. Now shower, because we're going out." "I'm not going anywhere." "Fine, then I'm staying here until you rot. Your choice." Reluctantly, Olivia showered and dressed. Rebecca forced food down her throat and wouldn't let her retreat back into depression. "You're Olivia Carter," Rebecca said firmly. "The girl who graduated top of her class, who survived her dad walking out, who put herself through college. You're a fighter, and you don't give up because one mean woman told lies. Everyone believes her, so prove them wrong. Find another job. Show them your skills weren't about Julian Sterling." Took another week, but Olivia finally updated her resume. She applied to smaller companies, places where the Sterling scandal wouldn't matter as much. A marketing firm called Horizon Creative responded within days. The interview went well. The hiring manager, a kind woman named Stephanie, was impressed by her skills. "I'll be honest," Stephanie said. "I heard about what happened at Sterling Media, but I also did my research. Your academic record is impeccable. Your references from before Sterling are glowing, and your work samples are excellent. I believe you earned your position there regardless of any personal relationship. The job is yours if you want it." The salary was half what Sterling paid, but Olivia didn't care. It was a fresh start. "I want it, thank you." She started the following Monday. Horizon Creative was smaller, less prestigious, but the people were genuinely nice. No office politics, no backstabbing, just good work and mutual respect. Olivia threw herself into her new role, determined to prove she was more than scandal. She worked hard, pitched innovative ideas, and slowly began to feel like herself again. But she missed Julian with an ache that wouldn't fade. Every night she wondered what he was doing, if he thought about her. If he hated her for running, 2 weeks into her new job, Rebecca texted her, "Turn on Channel 7 News, now." Confused, Olivia turned on the small TV in the break room. There on the screen was Julian, standing outside Sterling Media Group with reporters surrounding him. "Mr. Sterling, is it true you fired Vanessa Monroe?" Yes, Ms. Monroe engaged in workplace harassment and defamation. Legal action is being taken. What about the allegations regarding you and Olivia Carter? Julian looked directly into the camera. Ms. Carter was and is an exceptional professional who earned her position through merit. Any insinuation otherwise is false and slanderous. The personal relationship that developed between us happened after her hire and was mutual and consensual. She is one of the most talented individuals I've ever worked with, and I deeply regret that my company's toxic environment drove her away. Olivia's hands shook. Are you currently in a relationship with Ms. Carter? That's between me and Olivia? But I will say this. She is remarkable, intelligent, principled, and deserves to be judged on her abilities, not on who she cares about. I hope she's watching this, because I need her to know that I'm sorry. Sorry I couldn't protect her better. Sorry I put her in that position. And sorry I let her leave thinking any of this was her fault. Tears streamed down Olivia's face. Mr. Sterling, some are saying this is just damage control. Let them say what they want. I know the truth. Olivia knows the truth. It's all that matters. He turned and walked back into the building, ignoring the shouted questions. Olivia's phone rang. Julian, she stared at it, hand trembling, and answered, "Did you see?" His voice was rough. "I saw. I meant every word. You're brilliant, Olivia. You always were. Anyone who can't see that is blind. Julian, I don't know what to say. Say you'll see me. Let me apologize properly. Let me tell you everything I should have said before. I'm at work, then after work. I'll wait all night if I have to. Please, Olivia." They met at a quiet coffee shop far from both their offices. Julian looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and rumpled clothes. He stood when she entered, and for a moment they just stared at each other. "You look good," he said finally. "You look terrible," she replied honestly. He laughed, a broken sound. "Haven't been sleeping well. Turns out the woman I love walked out of my life and I can't function properly." "Julian, let me finish. I handled everything wrong. I should have gone public with our relationship from the start. Should have protected you better. Should have fired Vanessa the first time she was inappropriate. I thought I could manage it all, but I failed. I failed you. It wasn't just your responsibility. It was, though. I'm the one with power in that situation. Should have used it better." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I love you, Olivia. Not because you're convenient, or because we have chemistry, though God knows we have that. I love you because you're courageous and honest, and you make me want to be a better man. And I know I have no right to ask, but I'm asking anyway. Give me another chance." Olivia looked at their joined hands. "People will still talk. Let them. My new boss might not like me dating the CEO of Sterling Media, then quit and come work somewhere else. Or don't work at all. Or start your own company and I'll be your first investor. I don't care, Olivia. I just want you in my life. You'd really give up your reputation for me in a heartbeat? Because reputation doesn't keep me warm at night. Success doesn't make me laugh. Money doesn't make me feel alive the way you do." His grip tightened on her hand. "I love you. And I'm not giving up on us unless you tell me there's absolutely no hope." Olivia thought about the past months, the fear, the pain, the scandal, but she also thought about the laughter, the passion, the way Julian looked at her like she was his whole world. "There's hope," she whispered. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. Yeah, but we're doing this differently. No secrets, no hiding. If we're together for real." "Absolutely. I'll shout it from the rooftops if you want." "Maybe not that dramatic," she laughed, "but honest. Open. No matter what people say. Deal." He stood and pulled her up into his arms. "Can I kiss you now? I've been dying to kiss you for weeks. You better." Relief and joy and promise all wrapped up in one perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "So what now?" Olivia asked. "Now I take you to dinner. Then maybe a walk. And I spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how much I love you. That's a pretty ambitious plan. I'm an ambitious guy. You should know that by now." They left the coffee shop hand in hand, facing whatever would come together. 6 months later, Olivia sat in her new office at Sterling Media Group, not as Julian's assistant, but as director of marketing innovation, a position she had earned through a competitive application process overseen by an independent hiring committee. The whispers had eventually died down. Her work spoke for itself. She launched 3 successful campaigns that brought major clients to Sterling. Industry publications featured her insights. Slowly, people stopped seeing her as Julian Sterling's girlfriend and started seeing her as Olivia Carter, marketing genius. Julian knocked on her doorframe. "Ready for lunch?" "Always," she smiled, grabbing her purse. They walked through the office together, no longer hiding. Some people still gossiped, but most had moved on to other scandals. In the elevator, Julian pulled her close. "Happy? Very?" Olivia said, meaning it completely. "You. Never been happier." He kissed her forehead. "Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for not giving up on us." The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and they walked out into the sunshine, 2 people who had fought for their love and won. Because sometimes the best things in life are worth fighting for. And sometimes, just sometimes, the fairy tale ending is real. Alina Carter stared at the coffee stains spreading across the marble floor of the executive suite. Her heart sinking as she realized it had splattered onto the hem of her boss's custom Italian suit pants. Adrian Blackwell stood frozen, his phone pressed to his ear, looking down at the damage with an expression Alina could not quite read. "I'll call you back," Adrian said into the phone, his voice oddly calm. He ended the call and looked at Alina, who was already grabbing napkins from his desk. "Mr. Blackwell, I am so sorry," Alina stammered, dropping to her knees to blot the coffee. "I tripped over the carpet edge. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, or replacement, or whatever you need." "Alina, stop," Adrian said, and something in his tone made her look up. He was not angry. Instead, he looked tired, almost defeated, which was unusual for the man Forbes had just named one of the most innovative tech entrepreneurs under 40. "It's just a suit. I have 17 others exactly like it." Lena stood, still clutching the coffee-soaked napkins. In 3 years of working as Adrian's executive assistant, she had learned to read his moods better than anyone else at Blackwell Technologies. Right now, beneath the expensive suit and commanding presence, her boss looked like a man carrying the weight of something far heavier than quarterly earnings reports. "Is everything okay?" she asked, forgetting for a moment the professional boundaries she usually maintained. Adrian walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle, his hands shoved into his pockets. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across his office, highlighting the tension in his shoulders. "My father is turning 60 next Saturday," he said finally. "There's a gala at the estate. 500 guests, press coverage, the whole theatrical production my family excels at creating." Alina had heard about Harrison Blackwell's legendary parties. The man had built a real estate empire worth billions, and he believed in showing it off at every opportunity. "That sounds like quite an event," Alina offered, unsure where this conversation was heading. "Except my father has decided this is the perfect opportunity to officially announce my engagement to Vanessa Sterling." Alina felt her stomach drop, though she could not explain why. She knew Vanessa Sterling by reputation. The woman was a socialite, philanthropist, and heiress to the Sterling Hotel fortune. She was also stunningly beautiful, impeccably connected, and had been photographed with Adrian at various charity events over the past year. "I didn't realize you were engaged," Alina said carefully. "Congratulations." Adrian turned to face her, and there was something almost desperate in his expression. "I'm not engaged. Vanessa and I went on 3 dates, all arranged by our parents. And I made it clear I wasn't interested in pursuing anything serious. But she's convinced our families should merge their empires, and my father agrees. He's been pressuring me for months. Can't you just tell them no?" "I have. Repeatedly. But my father is a man who sees what he wants to see. And Vanessa is a woman who doesn't accept rejection easily. If I show up alone to this gala, they'll parade her around as my date. And every newspaper in the city will run engagement speculation stories by morning." Lena shifted uncomfortably, still not understanding why Adrian was confiding all this to her. "So what are you going to do?" Adrian took a deep breath, and Alina recognized the look on his face. It was the same expression he wore before presenting a risky business proposal to the board. "I need you to be my girlfriend for the evening," he said. Alina blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Fake girlfriend, to be precise. Just for one night. If I show up with someone I'm clearly involved with, it sends a message to both Vanessa and my father that I'm not available. Mr. Blackwell, I don't think that's appropriate. I work for you." "Which is exactly why you're perfect for this," Adrian said, moving closer. "You know me better than anyone else in my life. You can anticipate what I'm going to say before I say it. We already have natural chemistry in a professional sense. It wouldn't take much to make it appear romantic." Elena's mind was racing. This was insane, inappropriate, completely outside the bounds of their working relationship. And yet, a small part of her, the part she usually kept locked away during business hours, was intrigued. "Why me?" she asked. "You could call any of dozens of women who would jump at the chance to be seen as Adrian Blackwell's girlfriend, even for a night." "Because I trust you," Adrian said simply. "Because you're honest and smart, and you won't get the wrong idea about what this is. And because I'm willing to pay you $10,000 for approximately 6 hours of your time." Alina's breath caught. $10,000. That was almost 3 months of her salary, and more importantly, it was exactly what she still needed for her sister's medical expenses. Jenna had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder 6 months ago, and even with insurance, the experimental treatment she needed was devastatingly expensive. $10,000 to pretend to be your girlfriend for one evening, Alina repeated slowly. Plus a shopping budget for whatever you need to wear to the event. Call it 2004 clothes, shoes, hair, makeup, whatever makes you feel confident. Alina bit her lip, her practical side warring with her sense of professional ethics. "This is crazy, completely insane," Adrian agreed. "But will you do it?" She thought about Jenna, about the mounting medical bills, about the scared look in her little sister's eyes during their last hospital visit. She thought about how Adrian had been a good boss, demanding but fair, and how he was looking at her now with something close to desperation. "I have conditions," Alina said finally. Relief flooded Adrian's face. "Name them." "First, this is strictly professional. One night, nothing more, nothing less. Afterward, we never mention it again, and our working relationship remains exactly as it is." "Agreed." "Second, you brief me completely on your family, friends, and anyone else who will be at this gala. I need to know enough to be convincing. I'll give you a full dossier." "Third, we practice." "If we're going to make this believable, we need to look comfortable together. That means rehearsing how we interact, what our story is, all of it." Adrian smiled, and Alina realized it was the first genuine smile she had seen from him in weeks. "So you're saying yes?" Alina took a deep breath, knowing she was crossing a line she could never uncross. "Yes, I'll be your fake girlfriend, but only for that one night." "Thank you, Alina," Adrian said, and the gratitude in his voice was so sincere that Alina felt a flutter of something she definitely should not be feeling for her boss. "I promise I'll make this as painless as possible." As Alina left his office to clean up the coffee disaster, she wondered if she had just made the best decision of her life, or the worst. What she did not know was that by agreeing to one night of pretending, she had set in motion a chain of events that would change everything she thought she knew about Adrian Blackwell, about herself, and about the fine line between performance and reality. The following morning, Alina arrived at the office to find an envelope on her desk. Inside was a black credit card with her name embossed on it and a note in Adrian's distinctive handwriting for shopping. "Don't hold back. You need to look like someone I would actually date." Alina smiled despite herself, tucking the card into her wallet. She had agreed to play a part, and she was going to play it perfectly. What she had not anticipated was how quickly the lines between acting and authenticity would begin to blur, or how one night of pretending could reveal truths that both she and Adrian had been hiding from themselves for far longer than either wanted to admit. The week leading up to the gala passed in a blur of preparation that felt both surreal and strangely intimate. Adrian had been true to his word, providing Alina with detailed information about every important person who would be attending his father's birthday celebration. They spent their lunch breaks reviewing names, relationships, and the intricate web of business connections that defined the Blackwell social circle. But it was the evenings that changed everything. On Tuesday, Adrian had insisted they practice at his penthouse apartment rather than the office, claiming they needed a more relaxed environment to seem natural together. Alina had entered the sleek, modern space with her notepad and professional demeanor firmly in place, only to find Adrian waiting with takeout containers and a nervousness she had never seen in him before. "Lesson 1, he had said, gesturing to the couch. "We need to be comfortable in each other's personal space." They had spent 2 hours simply sitting close, talking about things that had nothing to do with Blackwell Technologies. Alina learned that Adrian played piano, but only when he thought no one could hear him. That he had wanted to be an architect before his father pushed him into the family business. That he donated anonymously to 3 different children's hospitals because his younger brother had died of leukemia when Adrian was 12. By Thursday, they were holding hands without thinking about it, and Adrian could rest his arm around Elena's shoulders in a way that looked completely natural. On Friday evening, they practiced dancing in his living room, moving together to soft music while rain drummed against the windows. When the song ended, they had stood there, swaying slightly, Adrian's hand warm on the small of Elena's back, both of them pretending not to notice how perfectly they fit together. "You're a good dancer," Alina had whispered, suddenly aware of how close his face was to hers. "You're easy to lead," Adrian had replied, his voice rough. For a moment, Alina thought he might kiss her. Really kiss her, but then he had stepped back and suggested they call it a night. Now, standing in her bedroom on Saturday evening, Alina barely recognized her reflection. The dress she had chosen was midnight blue silk that hugged her curves before flowing into an elegant skirt. Her dark hair was swept up in a sophisticated style. The makeup artist Adrian had sent over had transformed her features into something glamorous yet natural. She looked like someone who belonged in Adrian Blackwell's world. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Adrian stood in her doorway wearing a tailored black tuxedo. The expression on his face when he saw her made Elena's heart skip several beats. "Elena," he breathed. "You look stunning. Clean up pretty well yourself," she managed, trying to ignore the warmth spreading through her chest. The drive to the Blackwell estate took 40 minutes, winding through increasingly expensive neighborhoods until they passed through massive iron gates into what could only be described as a private kingdom. The house itself was a sprawling mansion lit by thousands of lights, with valets, parking cars, and guests in evening wear streaming through the entrance. "Ready?" Adrian asked, taking her hand as the valet opened her door. Alina squeezed his fingers. "As I'll ever be." The moment they entered the grand ballroom, Alina understood why Adrian had been so anxious. The space was filled with the kind of wealth and power that most people only saw in movies. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, a full orchestra played on a raised platform, and waiters circulated with champagne and caviar. Every person in attendance looked like they belonged on the cover of a magazine. "Ah, Adrian!" A woman's voice cut through the crowd. Alina turned to see an elegant woman in her late 50s approaching. Her silver hair perfectly styled, her smile warm, but her eyes sharp and assessing. "There you are. We've been waiting," Mother Adrian said, and Alina heard genuine affection in his voice. "This is Elena Carter." "Alina, my mother, Grace Blackwell?" Grace extended her hand and Alina shook it, feeling the weight of the older woman's scrutiny. "Alina, Adrian has mentioned you numerous times over the years. It's lovely to finally meet you properly." "The pleasure's mine." "Mrs. Blackwell," Alina said, grateful that her voice came out steady.
Please.
"Call me Grace. Any woman who can keep my son organized and relatively sane deserves to be on a first-name basis." Grace's smile widened. "Though I must admit, I'm surprised. Adrian has always been so careful about keeping his personal and professional lives separate. Sometimes the best relationships develop from friendship and mutual respect," Adrian said smoothly, his hand moving to the small of Elena's back in a gesture that looked completely natural after their week of practice. Before Grace could respond, a booming voice interrupted. "There's my son." Harrison Blackwell was an imposing man, tall and broad-shouldered despite his age. With silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that made everyone in his vicinity instinctively pay attention. He approached with a beautiful blonde woman on his arm, and Elena's stomach tightened when she recognized Vanessa Sterling from the society page photographs. Adrian Harrison said, embracing his son briefly before turning his attention to Elena. And who is this? Father, this is Elena Carter, my girlfriend. Elena, my father, Harrison Blackwell. Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly. Your girlfriend. Well, this is unexpected. He shook Elena's hand, his grip firm and evaluating. What do you do, Elena? I work in executive management, Elena replied, using the description Adrian had suggested. It was technically true, even if it glossed over the fact that she was Adrian's assistant. How did you two meet? Vanessa interjected, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold. She was even more beautiful in person, with perfect features and a designer dress that probably cost more than Elena's car. At work, Adrian said easily, Elena has been with Blackwell Technologies for 3 years. We became friends first, and over the past several months we realized it was something more. How convenient, Vanessa said, her smile never wavering. And romantic, I suppose, though mixing business with pleasure can be so complicated. Not when you find the right person, Elena said, surprising herself with her boldness. She looked up at Adrian, and the smile he gave her in return made her forget for a moment that they were acting. The evening continued in a whirlwind of introductions. Elena met Adrian's younger sister Charlotte, a whip-smart college student who whispered, "Thank God you're not Vanessa," before hugging Elena enthusiastically. She shook hands with business partners, smiled through conversations about yachts and summer homes in the Hamptons, and gradually began to relax into her role. Adrian was attentive without being overbearing, bringing her champagne, introducing her with pride in his voice, keeping his hand on her back or their fingers intertwined in a way that felt increasingly natural. Several times Elena caught herself forgetting that this was all pretend, that come Monday morning they would return to being boss and assistant, that the way Adrian looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention was just part of the performance. As the orchestra began playing a waltz, Adrian led her onto the dance floor. They moved together easily, the result of their practice sessions, and Elena found herself resting her head against his shoulder, breathing in his cologne. Feeling the solid warmth of him against her. "You're incredible," Adrian murmured into her hair. "Everyone believes it completely. Even my father seems impressed." "That's good," Elena whispered back, trying to ignore the disappointment that fluttered through her. Of course, he was pleased that their act was convincing. That was the entire point, Adrian said, pulling back slightly to look at her face. "I need to tell you something." But before he could continue, Vanessa appeared beside them, her smile sharp. "May I cut in? I'd love to have a dance with Adrian for old time's sake." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Actually, Vanessa, I'd prefer to stay with Elena." "Just one dance," Vanessa insisted, already positioning herself between them. "Surely your girlfriend won't mind sharing you for a few minutes." Elena, not wanting to cause a scene, stepped back. "Of course not. I'll get some air." She slipped away before Adrian could protest, needing a moment to collect herself. The performance was wearing on her, making her wish for things that were never part of their agreement. She found a side door that led to an expansive garden. Lit by lanterns and blessedly quiet compared to the ballroom, Elena walked along a stone path, her heels clicking softly until she reached a fountain surrounded by rose bushes. She sat on the marble edge, looking up at the stars, and trying to remember why she had agreed to this charade in the first place. The money, yes, but somewhere over the past week, it had stopped being about the money and started being about the dangerous hope that maybe Adrian saw her as more than just his efficient assistant.
So you're the poor girl who thinks?
She can land Adrian Blackwell. Lena spun to find Vanessa standing behind her, the sweetness completely gone from her voice. In the dim light of the garden, the socialite looked predatory. "Excuse me," Elena said, standing up. "Please, did you really think I wouldn't do my research?" Vanessa pulled out her phone, scrolling through something before turning the screen to face Elena. Elena Carter. Age 27. College dropout. Currently earning $48,000 a year as an executive assistant. Your sister has been in and out of hospitals for 6 months, with medical bills totaling over $100,000. Your mother died when you were 16. Your father works construction in Portland, and you've been living paycheck to paycheck your entire adult life. Lena felt the blood drain from her face. How did you money can buy a lot of information, sweetie? And what it tells me is that you're a gold digger who saw an opportunity and jumped at it. How much is he paying you to pretend to be his girlfriend? Or are you holding out for something more permanent? You don't know anything about me or my relationship with Adrian, Lena said, her voice shaking with anger and humiliation. I know that you don't belong in this world. I know that Harrison Blackwell would never accept someone like you as a daughter-in-law. And I know that whatever little arrangement you have with Adrian will end the moment I walk back into that ballroom and share what I've learned with his father. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Adrian Blackwell is going to marry me. Our families have been planning it for years. You're just a temporary distraction, a charity case he'll forget about the moment someone better comes along. So do yourself a favor and walk away now before you get hurt. Trust me, girls, like you always get hurt when they try to play in our world. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Without another word, she turned and walked quickly back toward the mansion, her only thought to find her coat and call a cab. She could not do this anymore, could not pretend that she was someone she was not, could not keep acting like she belonged in a world where people like Vanessa Sterling could destroy her with a few phone calls. She was halfway across the ballroom when she heard Adrian's voice. Lena, wait. But she did not stop, could not stop, even as she felt everyone's eyes on her, even as she heard the whispers starting to spread through the crowd. She just needed to get out, to breathe, to stop pretending that Cinderella stories happened to girls like her. She had almost reached the entrance when Adrian caught her arm, spinning her around to face him. Alina, what happened? What did Vanessa say to you? Let me go, Adrian, Alina said, her voice breaking. This was a mistake. All of it. Tell me what she said. The truth, Alina whispered. She said the truth. That I don't belong here. That your father would never accept me. That I'm just a charity case you'll forget about. And she's right. So thank you for the money, but I can't do this anymore. Adrian's expression hardened into something Alina had never seen before. Stay here, he said. Please, just give me 2 minutes. Before Alina could respond, Adrian turned and strode back into the ballroom. Alina watched, frozen, as he climbed onto the small stage where the orchestra had been playing. Taking the microphone from the surprised conductor, "Excuse me, everyone," Adrian's voice boomed through the speakers, silencing the crowd. "I need to say something." Harrison Blackwell stepped forward, looking alarmed. "Son, this isn't the time, actually. Father, it's the perfect time. I've been letting you and everyone else in this room control my life for too long, and it ends tonight." The entire ballroom had gone silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on Adrian. Alina stood paralyzed in the doorway, unable to move, unable to process what was happening. "I brought Alina here tonight because I wanted to introduce you all to the woman I'm in love with," Adrian continued, his eyes finding Alina across the crowd. "Not someone I'm fake dating, not someone I'm pretending to care about to avoid an arrangement I never wanted. The woman I'm actually genuinely in love with." Lena's heart stopped beating. Lena Carter is the smartest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever known. She works as my executive assistant, yes, and I don't care who knows it or who thinks that's inappropriate. For 3 years, she's been the first person I want to talk to in the morning and the last person I think about at night. She makes me laugh. She challenges me. She sees through all the corporate nonsense to who I really am. And somewhere along the way, I fell completely in love with her. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now, and she could not tell if they were from shock, joy, or terror. "So too Vanessa Sterling," Adrian said, looking directly at the blonde woman who stood frozen in the crowd. "Thank you for showing your true colors tonight. And to my father, I love you, but if you can't accept Alina, then you can't accept me, because I'm not walking away from her. Not now, not ever." Adrian set down the microphone and walked through the silent crowd toward Alina. When he reached her, he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I should have told you sooner. This stopped being fake for me days ago. Maybe it was never really fake at all. Alina breathed, her hands coming up to grip his jacket. This is crazy, I know. But it's also true. So please, Elena Carter, will you stop being my fake girlfriend and consider being my real one? Alina laughed through her tears, and then she kissed him, really kissed him, in front of his entire world. The ballroom erupted in applause, though whether it was approval or shock, Alina no longer cared. All that mattered was Adrian, solid and real, and choosing her. When they finally broke apart, Harrison Blackwell was standing beside them, his expression unreadable. Well, he said finally, that was quite a speech, son. I meant every word, Adrian said firmly. Harrison studied them both for a long moment, then surprised everyone by smiling. Good. Grace has been telling me for years that I push you too hard, try to control too much. And that young lady, he nodded at Alina, stood up to me earlier tonight in a way most people are too afraid to try. I respect that. He extended his hand to Alina. Welcome to the family. Ms. Carter, I suspect you're exactly what my son needs. Alina shook his hand. Still dazed, Grace appeared and hugged her warmly. Thank God, Adrian's mother whispered in her ear. I was so worried he'd end up with that horrible Sterling girl. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations, curious questions, and sideways glances. But Alina did not care about any of it because Adrian never left her side. Holding her hand like he was afraid she might disappear if he let go, as the party wound down and they finally escaped to Adrian's car, Alina turned to him in the darkness. Was any of that planned? She asked. The part where I fell in love with you. No. The part where I realized I couldn't keep pretending it was just business. That happened somewhere around our third practice session when you fell asleep on my couch and I spent an hour just watching you breathe. Alina smiled. You're not the boss I thought you were. And you're so much more than an assistant. You always have been. They drove back to the city in comfortable silence, hands intertwined. Both of them knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The fake date had become real. The performance had revealed the truth. And somewhere between a coffee-stained suit and a ballroom confession, they had stumbled into something that felt an awful lot like fate. The morning after the gala, Alina woke up in her own apartment with the strange sensation that the previous night had been an elaborate dream. But when she checked her phone, she found 47 text messages, including 3 from Adrian, 5 from her best friend who had seen clips of Adrian's speech already circulating on social media, and 1 from her sister Jenna that simply read, "Call me right now." Alina was still staring at her phone when her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Adrian standing there with coffee and pastries, still wearing his tuxedo pants and a wrinkled dress shirt, looking like he had not slept at all. "Hi," he said, suddenly looking uncertain in a way that made Alina's heart ache. "Can I come in?" Alina stepped aside and Adrian entered her small apartment, setting the coffee and pastries on her kitchen counter. They stood there for a moment in awkward silence. The easy intimacy of the previous night replaced by the weight of everything that had been said in front of 500 witnesses. Adrian Alina began, but he interrupted her. "Before you say anything, I need you to know that everything I said last night was true. I didn't plan it, and I probably should have told you privately first. But when I saw you leaving, when I realized Vanessa had hurt you, I just couldn't let you think that any of this was fake anymore." "How long?" Alina asked quietly. "How long have you known?" Adrian ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Alina had learned meant he was struggling with something difficult. "Honestly, I think part of me has known for a long time. Maybe even years. But I convinced myself it was inappropriate, that I was your boss, and crossing that line would be wrong. It wasn't until I asked you to fake date me that I had to face the truth." He moved closer, his eyes searching hers. "That first practice session, when we were just sitting on my couch talking, I realized I had been lying to myself. I don't just respect you as an employee, Alina. I'm in love with you. With your laugh, your intelligence, the way you call me out when I'm being ridiculous, the way you make everything in my life better just by being in it." Lena felt tears threatening again. "I thought I was going crazy. All week, every time we practiced, every time you touched me or looked at me a certain way, I kept telling myself it was just acting, that you were a good performer, and I was reading too much into it. It was never acting for me, Adrian said softly. Every touch, every look, every moment was real. I was just too afraid to admit it. What happens now? Alina whispered. You're still my boss. Your father may have been gracious last night, but the board, the company, there are rules about relationships between supervisors and employees. Adrian smiled. About that. I spent most of the night on the phone with our legal team and HR department. As of Monday morning, you're being promoted to Director of Strategic Operations, reporting directly to the coup instead of me. Same floor, different chain of command, substantial raise, and absolutely no ethical violations. Lena's eyes widened. You can't just create a position for me because we're dating. That position has been vacant for 6 months because we couldn't find anyone qualified enough. You've been doing half those duties already without the title or compensation. I should have promoted you a year ago, but I was too selfish to risk losing you as my assistant. He took her hands in his. This isn't charity, Elena. You've earned this 10 times over. Adrian, I don't know what to say. I say you'll give us a real chance. No fake dating, no pretending, just us figuring this out together. Alina looked up at the man who had somehow become her best friend without her realizing it. The man who had defended her in front of his entire world. The man who was looking at her like she was the most precious thing he had ever seen. Yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it. Adrian pulled her into his arms, and they stood there in her tiny kitchen, holding each other as morning light streamed through the windows. When they finally pulled apart, Adrian's expression turned serious. There's something else I need to tell you, and I need you to not be angry. Lena's stomach dropped. What? Your sister's surgery? The experimental treatment she needed. What about it? Adrian took a deep breath. I paid for it. 3 weeks ago, the hospital called it an anonymous donation, but it was me. Alina stepped back, her mind reeling. You what? I overheard you on the phone with the hospital, talking about payment plans and trying to figure out how to cover the costs. I couldn't stand the thought of you worrying about money when I had more than enough to help. So I made some calls and took care of it. Adrian, that treatment cost over $60,000. I know. You paid $60,000 for my sister's medical treatment without telling me. Yes. He met her eyes steadily. And I'd do it again. Alina, that money means nothing to me compared to your peace of mind. I know you're proud and independent, and I know you might see this as charity, but it wasn't. It was me taking care of someone I love by helping the person she loves most in the world. Alina didn't know whether to laugh or cry or scream. You're impossible. I know. Is that a deal breaker? She thought about Jenna, about the relief she had felt when the hospital called to say an anonymous donor had covered the costs, about the nights she had been able to sleep without that crushing weight of worry. She thought about the man standing in front of her who had given her sister a chance at health without asking for anything in return. It's not a deal breaker. But from now on, we make decisions together. No more grand gestures without discussion. Heck, live with that, Adrian said, relief flooding his face. As long as you can live with the fact that I'm going to want to spoil you sometimes. Sometimes, Alina agreed. But I'm still paying my own rent and buying my own coffee, even though I'm apparently terrible at making coffee, and yours is much better. Alina laughed. Yes, even though. They spent the rest of the morning talking, really talking, about expectations and boundaries and what dating would look like now that they weren't pretending. Adrian confessed that he had been planning to tell her how he felt for weeks, but kept losing his nerve. Alina admitted that she had been half in love with him since the company Christmas party, too. Years ago, when he had noticed she was sitting alone and spent an hour talking to her about her favorite books instead of networking with potential clients. By afternoon, they had moved to her couch. Alina curled against Adrian's side while they ignored the constant buzzing of their phones. The world wanted to know about Adrian Blackwell's dramatic declaration, but for now, the world could wait. I should probably call my sister, Alina said eventually. She sent me about 20 increasingly frantic messages. And I should call my mother before she shows up here to make sure I haven't messed this up, Adrian added. But neither of them moved, content to stay exactly where they were. Over the following weeks, Alina and Adrian navigated their new reality with a mixture of joy and adjustment. True to his word, Adrian had her promoted, and Alina threw herself into her new role with enthusiasm. Working on a different floor meant they saw each other less during the day, which made their evenings together even more precious. The media attention was intense for a while. Several outlets ran stories about the Cinderella romance between the billionaire CEO and his former assistant. Vanessa Sterling gave an interview calling their relationship inappropriate and Adrian emotionally unstable. But the comments section was flooded with people defending their love story and criticizing Vanessa's obvious jealousy. Harrison Blackwell, surprisingly, became one of their biggest supporters. He invited them to Sunday dinners at the estate and seemed genuinely charmed by Elena's directness and intelligence. Grace simply hugged Alina every time she saw her and told Adrian repeatedly how proud she was that he had finally found someone real. Jenna recovered beautifully from her treatment. And when she was finally healthy enough, Adrian flew both her and Elena's father out to Seattle to meet properly. Watching Adrian nervously try to impress her construction worker father while Jenna teased them both mercilessly was one of Elena's favorite memories. 6 months after the gala, Adrian took Alina back to the Blackwell estate for another party, this time a summer garden celebration. As they walked through the same garden where Vanessa had confronted her, Alina marveled at how much had changed. "Remember when you brought me here as your fake girlfriend?" Alina asked, squeezing Adrian's hand. "How could I forget? It was the night I stopped lying to myself about what I wanted." They reached the fountain where Alina had sat, heartbroken and ready to run. Adrian stopped walking and turned to face her. And Elena's breath caught when she saw him reach into his jacket pocket. "Adrian," she whispered. "I know we said no grand gestures without discussion," he said, pulling out a small velvet box. "But I talked to your sister and your father, and they both gave me their blessing. I talked to Charlotte, who told me I was an idiot if I didn't do this soon. I even talked to my mother, who cried and said it was about time." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, the diamond catching the late afternoon sun. But what made Elena's eyes fill with tears was the band itself, which was engraved with tiny stars. "You told me once that you used to make wishes on stars when you were a little girl," Adrian said softly. "You said you wished for a life that felt like magic, for a love that was real, for someone who would see you for exactly who you are." He knelt down on one knee, and Elena's hands flew to her mouth. "Alina Carter, you are my wish come true. You're the magic I didn't know I was missing. The reality that's better than any fantasy, the person who sees all of me and loves me anyway. I know we started with a fake date and a business arrangement, but what we have now is the most real thing in my life." Tears were streaming down Elena's face as Adrian looked up at her with absolute certainty in his eyes. "Will you marry me? For real this time? No pretending, no acting, just us and this love that keeps growing every single day." "Yes," Alina sobbed, dropping to her knees in front of him. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger and then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like tears and laughter and the promise of forever. Around them, the garden erupted in applause. Alina looked up to see both their families watching from the terrace. Grace crying happy tears, Harrison beaming with pride, Charlotte jumping up and down with excitement, and Jenna recording everything on her phone. "Did you plan this whole thing?" Alina asked, laughing through her tears. "I might have coordinated with a few people," Adrian admitted. "Is that okay? I know we said we'd make decisions together, but I wanted this moment to be special." "It's perfect," Alina assured him. "You're perfect. Well, not perfect, but perfect for me." "I love you," Adrian said, kissing her again. "My fake girlfriend, my real love, my future wife." "I love you too," Alina whispered against his lips. "Though I have to say, this is way better than the $10,000 you originally offered me." Adrian laughed, the sound pure and joyful. "Much better deal for me too. I get you forever instead of just one night." They walked back to join their families hand in hand, Elena's ring catching the light with every step. As everyone surrounded them with hugs and congratulations and demands to hear every detail of the proposal, Alina caught Adrian's eye across the crowd. He smiled at her, that same genuine smile she had taught him during their practice sessions. And she smiled back, knowing that every step of their unconventional journey had led them exactly where they were meant to be. The fake date had become real. The performance had revealed the truth. And the boss who had needed a temporary girlfriend had found his permanent future. It wasn't a fairy tale because fairy tales weren't real. But this love built on friendship and trust and choosing each other every single day. This was better than any story Alina could have imagined. 1 year later, they married in the same garden where Adrian had proposed, surrounded by everyone who mattered. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Adrian whispered in Elena's ear, "Thank you for agreeing to fake date me," Elena laughed. "Thank you for being brave enough to make it real." "Yes. Best business decision I ever made," Adrian said. Pulling her closer, "I'm pretty sure mixing business with pleasure is generally considered a bad idea," Alina teased. "Then we'll be the exception that proves the rule." And they were. Because sometimes the best love stories start with a lie that becomes the truest thing you've ever known. With a performance that reveals your authentic self. With a single night that changes everything forever. Sometimes Cinderella doesn't need a fairy godmother. She just needs a boss brave enough to admit he's been in love with her all along. And sometimes, the girl who agreed to fake date a millionaire for one night ends up with something far more valuable than money. A partnership built on equality, a love built on friendship, and a happily ever after that's completely, perfectly, wonderfully real.